serving as chairman. I think we did a great job. Look forward to more coming up this next year. Okay, first thing would be the proposed Board of Supervisors financial policies. Mr. White, Mr. Johnson.
Can we ask questions now?
Give me a minute.
Now that I've presented the plans, Jim will answer questions.
We're waiting on technology, I believe.
I'm waiting on Jim.
I would, my brain was still on the meeting I just walked down here from, which we'll talk about in a little while, but, so I apologize for that. But it's on, only has one channel these days. Oh, Lord.
Basic
The
cable.
remote needs a new battery.
Golly days.
Just
Did
had that
ever.
the other day.
Yeah, he just,
Maybe by Easter. Maybe all the powers going by Easter.
Well, I'll make a couple of general comments while this beast is finding itself. This discussion obviously started back at the retreat, board retreat, last late winter, spring, whenever we actually did it. While we covered lots of different topics at that retreat, one of the ones that we focused on was trying to strike some stated positions with respect to the financial issues that the county faces. Probably the lead discussion had to do with the CIP and the over time how that has been sort of a fits and starts kind of a situation, and to try to get out in front of that a little bit and introduce a little bit of discipline in how we go about that, and then how that carries into the budgeting process. And so one of the areas that we as you see there, that we spent a good bit of time on was that the policies with respect to the CIP. But we also talked about, you know, where's the Goldilocks position with respect to the county overall fiscally and financially. We know we don't want to be like some counties that have, you know, multiple indoor tennis courts and swimming pools and things like that. We're not in that game, but we're also not, and I think we picked on some smaller counties down in the southern part of Virginia, to be named, where they literally budgeted to the mandated minimum in virtually all service categories. We wanted to be positioned somewhere between those two extremes, and so there is an attempt in front of you there to state that position, that sort of, to be cute about it, I call it the Goldilocks position, but obviously it's where we think the citizens are expecting us to be. And then the other three categories that we talked about was sort of the issue with respect to revenue, the issue with respect to debt, and then the tweaking of the reserve policy. So that's what you have in front of you. Brian and Glenda and Mark and I have had any number of debates and conversations about this, and we bring this to you at this point to review. I guess it's our expectations that at some point we might in fact actually adopt formal policies. If not these words, some edited version of these words. So I don't know, that's probably enough introductions. Mark, you want to say anything else about the process? I mean,
No, I think you covered it very well.
so there you have it. Except I don't have it yet.
it's up there.
I know, I'm gonna rely on that.
I like it. I got some questions. It's just, on the, next to the last bullet on the first page. measuring the outcomes and benefits of government services against established costs.
Yeah, good luck with that.
Okay.
But it sounded good.
I just wondered if there was any thoughts as to the process or how one would do that.
Yeah, I think one of the challenges that I think Jim and I had with this was in part we were trying to define what we're gonna do, but then partly we were defining what we should do or what we wanna do or what our goals are. And some of them are, it's a lot easier on some of them to say, we're not gonna use long-term, or we're not gonna use short-term debt to meet operations. There's some stuff that's easy. There's other stuff that's gonna take a lot more work and probably maybe some professional help.
Well, I think
so to speak.
the concept of saying that, what we're gonna fund, we're gonna do it by outcomes, we're not gonna do it by some other thing. I think that's a good concept, but I wasn't sure that there was any
And
way of detailing that.
one of the things that I didn't say and I should have is that there's a tiering or a hierarchy in this that we dealt with, sort of starting with the financial philosophy statement. There are really 4 policy categories. The one that deals with revenues from taxes, the one that deals with debt, one that deals with the CIP, and one that deals with the reserves. But underneath those, there are operational issues or other considerations, budgeting considerations, and these kind of things. And really, these objectives, I think, are the beginning thoughts, if you will, of some of those second and third tier considerations. That's not to say they aren't important; they are. But there's a lot of squishiness when you get beyond that first tier policy. I think that my suggestion is that we try to get to the point where we can reach some consensus on those first tier true policy articulations and deal with that. But this gives you a hint at what else could be there.
I mean, because that same concern about the details shows up on number 1 on the next page, plans to achieve specific outcomes. I like the concept there. We're not gonna do across-the-board increases. That's good, because, depending upon labor, what percentage of the budget is labor, may have a different impact on if you give a pay increase. Some departments would get more or less based upon their percentage of their department, depending on labor. So I'm in. I also like number 2 on the second page there. We're saying, okay, this is what we do. This is our this is the existing level of service, and we're not going to add new swimming pools or new indoor and tennis courts or whatever other things that.
That's right. I was going to say that at our retreat we talked a lot about
Mission
the essence
creep.
of number 2 in terms of mission
and
creep.
so I like that as a concept that we say that's where we are. Let's do that and do it well. Then I guess I did have a question on the revenue generation policy. Not to raise tax rates only in cases where a county must meet legal mandates, fund specific capital, or when a revenue source is marginally. Some of our current services, the costs are going up. And in some cases, when the population increases, the demand for services increases. Sometimes we get a natural revenue growth that would handle that, so we don't raise the rates. But I'm not sure that you can always achieve that. That just maintaining the existing level of service may require an increase. So I would have.
We tried to dampen that a little bit with the number 2 that you were just talking about.
Understand. That's why.
That's going to be a tug of war.
Yeah, I understand.
There isn't any doubt about it. But I guess we felt that the sort of raising tax rates is the avenue of last resort.
Understand, and And our efforts, on Route 3 and things like that are trying to generate revenue with things other than, raising tax.
And I call your attention to number 5 there, because that's, to me, that is one of the priorities in order to accomplish the tax revenue policy is,
I agree. I agree.
and whether we can do it or be successful, time will tell, but boy, that's our charge, I think.
Understand, and it's that activity that is going to be necessary to achieve our tax revenue generation policy. We're going to, because if we aren't generating new revenue sources, we're gonna have a hard time holding the tax rates in place.
Well, I think as a general rule over the last couple of years, that's what we've tried to do anyway.
Yeah.
And although we had a large one last year, it was all based on capital projects we had to fund.
Well, we had a discussion yesterday in the Route 3 steering committee. I mean, if you look at the big chunks, our revenue comes essentially from 3 sources. It comes to us from the outside, whether it's state or federal funds, that they give us back some of our money. That's one source. A source is we tax people's houses. And then the other source is really, directly or indirectly, it comes from our economy. Whether it's sales tax or real estate tax businesses pay, or personal property taxes individuals or businesses pays, or as we told the 8th graders, their cell phone taxes. It's really an economic activity is the third bucket. And what this is saying is, we can't do much about the first bucket. We can bitch and moan and beg to get some more money in from the state or the feds. We're certainly really good at taxing people's houses, but the challenge is to get it from economic activity as a priority. And I think that's a reasonable goal. And as you say, it's one we've been struggling with and working on for a number of years.
On your debt policies, short-term debt should only be used for aiding and smoothing cash flow. I would like to say as a last resort. Because the rest, as you go into the rest of your reserve policies, you obviously are setting criteria and sort of triggers so that you don't get into that short-term debt for cash flow issues.
I would support that. And at one time, we talked about also adding for lease purchase kind of arrangements. And there are times when lease purchase arrangements make sense. And so, and that's really a short-term debt.
Yeah, and I think that's really what we were talking about, those kinds of things, not going out and borrowing money to pay the bills, but
The phone system.
things
Right,
that,
exactly.
that,
The new ambulances.
All right, I was just looking at that when I read it as saying, oops, our reserves are down, we need to borrow to pay the bills this month.
no.
Okay.
That's what the financial policies are for. If nothing else, these policies should keep us
I know, and that's.
out of that situation.
And I read the rest of it, and it was
Yeah.
very, very clear that your triggers on 10,000 and 5,000, or 10 million and 5 million were to keep us from getting to that stage there.
Right.
I think it might be wise to consider adding specifically the recognition of lease purchase in that number 1, just for clarity.
Because right now, I read it as, oops,
Yeah.
we ran out of money and we gotta borrow.
No, that's a good catch, I think.
Yeah, well, I can understand that. Cash flow, aiding and smoothing cash flow, yeah.
Right, because your lease purchase is your short term
Yeah.
for that.
I guess we don't do any other kind of short-term debt other than lease purchases, do we? Does anybody have an answer to that? I don't know.
That's when I looked at that and I said, I don't remember us borrowing, running out of money and having to borrow.
And lease purchase is really your short-term financing.
Okay,
Right.
that's fine.
There are localities that do, like tax anticipation notes and things like that, if they're, don't have the reserves to cover it, but ours hasn't done any of that.
Well, they also have lines of credit, and I don't do we even have a line of credit? I know we don't use it, because we use reserves. So maybe that should be cleaned up to say something like short-term debt, such as leasehold or lease purchase agreements. should be used.
Smoothing cash flow with lease purchase agreements or
Maybe,
something.
maybe something
Whatever.
primarily for, capital equipment acquisition through short-term financing or lease purchase or something.
Yeah, so, I think that's where we were trying to get to, something like that.
Let's see.
I mean, as a general overview, I thought it was very good.
Yeah,
If you wanna detail it, yeah, you can add things into it.
Well, a lot of the things that are here are gonna require ongoing work, and, okay, how do we get there? How do we, we've kinda outlined, we've kind of, we've come in and said, this is what we'd like to do, this is how we'd like to do it, this is where we'd like to go, and the final goal, but there's gonna have to be a lot of actual steps in there that we're gonna have to get with the county administrator on, the board's gonna have to agree on them, and then the county administrator will have to get to work on them, and like I say, in some of these cases, we're probably gonna need some type of, financial expert advice on how you get there, whether it's through our current experts or somebody else.
It would be nice to, in some way, shape, or form, adopt these as a working document to move forward with. And instead of leaving it as, hey, we're going to do something for financial policies, have a rough frame that we've adopted to work within that particular scope.
I would agree with Jim. I'd like to adopt it. I think that even though there's a lot of lack of specificity in certain areas, I think it still establishes a framework that would be.
Lets everybody know the direction that we are
I think
definitely going in.
I mean, when we say that we're not going to expand services, when we say that we're not going to, that we're going to have triggers to keep our reserves in good shape, I think those are all good. The one other question I had is, we're budgeting for the 15%, not the 18%, is that right?
What page are you on?
On page 6, double I,
Oh, in the reserves?
yeah. I thought we were budgeting for 18. We're-
We have been using the 18, we always break it down between.
Understand the 15 and the 3,
Right.
but this looks like the 3 comes from a different source than our budget.
No, it's really all from the same source. I think it's just the way the policy was originally,
All right.
the 15 was first and then the 3
Yeah,
was
was added.
added later.
I don't think we really changed that, did we?
No.
Okay, if we didn't change that, that's
No.
fine. I mean,
No.
the way I read it, it looked to me like,
I mean, that is current policy, it's 15% reserve.
No, it's, the additional reserve should not exceed 3% of the combined budgeted expenditures. So I think
Okay.
it's,
that's the additional reserve, okay.
Yeah.
I'm all right with that then.
but I don't think Jim and I changed that at all, did we?
Okay,
No.
There is a red line copy in the back that will.
yeah. no.
Okay.
I don't wanna belabor this, but if you look at the capital, the CIP, policy, there's a couple things I'd like to point out, because I think they're important, and there's shifts, from precedent. Number 2, for example, calls for the establishment of something that we called here the Capital Projects Reserve Account. We did that probably because we didn't want to use the term fund, because we use fund all over the place. It's a bit of a mouthful, but.
We talked for 20 minutes, so what's
We did. I even literally went to the thesaurus and got no help at all, but I did have a word I liked, hoard. There was a word, Capital Projects Hoard, but.
Well, as long as you don't call it the capital reserve account for projects,
Yeah,
then all right.
yeah, that's right. But this, contemplates the establishment of such a specific entity, that can come from lots of
Just
sources.
figured that one out.
The penny just dropped. Yeah.
If that's what it funds,
The only
Flimsy crap
question I
it was.
had on that was, user fees going into that? I mean, I see the carry forward, the transfer of the general fund, grants, the nation's reserve, non-budgeted revenue, but user fees?
Why do we,
I think in the instance of user fees would be user fees that are over and above those collected to support the enterprise operation.
Okay, that's fine.
I'm looking at the finance director, that would be the instance where user fees are to pay for an enterprise operation, but there could be times where,
Right, but, you know, you have capital projects within the enterprise funds, that's why,
oh, is that, yeah.
like the landfill and
yes.
things like that?
Okay, all right.
And then item 3 is a bit of a change. And we did it in the CIP we just approved, but this sort of,
Sets-
memorializes that in a policy.
Sets us
Since it's a floor.
a floor,
But the floor is defined by debt service plus CIP.
which is good, which is good.
And, which includes the debt service
Sure.
piece.
Good.
And I think that's the right accounting.
Yep.
And the right way to make the decision. So
Okay.
3 memorializes what we just
I
did.
just commented on there, I like.
Oh, okay. Well, that's an important thing, and we did it this past CIP that we just approved, so.
And I like the new stuff in the reserve policy. It's a little stronger, a little, gets us involved, before we get into trouble.
Well, and it does another thing, and we historically, we apparently have been using the cash of the reserve policy for cash flow purposes. But nowhere in the policy did it, really provide for that. Didn't say you couldn't do it, but didn't say you could either.
Well, we would carry it forward to the next year, and that
Yeah.
help solve the budget problems for the next year.
All right, so all this does, we think, is adds
Well,
visibility.
No, but what Jim's talking about is there are times when we do dip into into the reserve, so we don't actually have the full reserves there,
In the form of cash.
because we use it for cash flow. So we borrow from
Well, that's why we have
ourselves.
it.
Well, but it's still important to understand that there isn't 18% of the budget that's in a lockbox somewhere and we
No.
never touch it.
No.
It does get touched sometimes
Sure.
when we're getting close to.
Well, and you can see that
the
in
new
terms of
tax year.
the treasurer's report, how much cash we've got.
Right.
Right, but I guess the point I wanted to make is, in addition to the, for emergency purposes or these kind of things, that reserve, it also supplies our cash flow. It replaces a line of credit. And this, I think, sanctions that in a way that it has never been done before, which is.
And also, we included a trigger there where if it went below a certain amount,
Right,
bells need to go off and
right.
lights flash.
Because it helps respond to the question, why do you need a 15% reserve or an 18% reserve, whatever it is? Among all the other things, it provides us the ability to cash flow our own operation.
One of the points back on this, I guess, safe or fail safe, it's a double check because the finance director and I would be bringing quarterly reports, and we would, as a professional best practice, we'd be canaries way before it would get to this point, but this memorializes the intent of the board to be involved, engaged in the overall management of the county's funds, so.
I'm glad the county administrator agreed to be a canary. That makes me feel really good.
When I don the I got a yellow tie tonight. If I briefly say, if I can capture the sense of the board, what I would suggest is, if you're comfortable with the language on these pages, is that we would get one more run-through by Davenport, because they've looked at earlier iterations of this, get them to do one more run-through. We will bring it back at the 27th meeting, subject to any revision, showing you if they changed, whatever, we'll get that out. And if you're in a position to adopt these financial policies at that time, their changes would only be to conform with, the bond underwriters and things to make sure we're not doing an unintended consequence. Once that's done, then there are a number of implementation guidelines and policies that I and the county director of finance could use that spring off of this, that actually give us the authority to make some of these things occur. So that would be kind of a phase 2 approach.
And I would like to separate this. I'd like for us to take actions on the narrow policy language first, and then separately, because this is, at some point, this is gonna be contained in about a 30-page document.
Right, I'm
And
saying
let's
you
not
take,
try to bite that all at one.
Oh, no,
No, I'm saying
this
do
is the
this-
preamble.
doing this now, and then we'll follow up with the finance committee on these implementation guidelines and go through the same type of review and analysis and bring those back at a future date. No, I'm not recommending doing it all at one time.
You wanna change those words on that, short-term debt?
I think we should,
Yeah, I
yeah.
think Glenda just got that.
I got that down.
I'm okay with doing that.
So what we have is what we'll bring back with that revision, we will get Davenport to look at it, intervening between now and the next board meeting. And then bring back whatever they've reviewed and certainly documenting the changes, I don't think the board. Certainly they'll have a rationale for it, I don't think it'll depart from where you all's intent is, and then we'll just tee it up for action at the 2017.
Okay.
All right, good, thank you, gentlemen. I certainly appreciate Mr. Johnson and Mr. White's work on this. They, I can attest they put some sweat equity into it.
All right, good. Next then, we'll go back to the update on erosion sediment control.
Feels like it's been a while since I've been up here.
We can fix that.
Last time you were here, you were clean shaven.
It has been a
So
while.
quickly.
I was gonna say, we go much longer, it'll turn white, and start calling him Rip.
I heard this comes with wisdom, so that's what I'm hoping. If you guys will recall, back in December, I brought this amendment to you for the ENS ordinance. Basically, it would more clearly define our land disturbance threshold in the county and in the towns. What we originally proposed was 2,500 square feet within the town of Orange, the town of Gordonsville. Board requested that we go to the towns to confirm that amount. We did. They're okay with it. The ordinance originally said that any subdivisions treated the same as the towns. Staff had a problem with that. I believe the board had a problem with that as well. And then what I brought to you last time was also probably not satisfactory either. So what I've come up with now is basically any property with a residential zoning. Minimum square footage in R1 and R2 it's under an acre. So I think this would satisfy our concerns, and in terms of a fairness issue, it would satisfy that as well. So that being said,
Yeah, I like the way you
So-
reformatted it as well, where you got the numbers up in the number 35 and then the,
So in ag zoning, it would still be 10,000.
still be the whatever's the state code's the maximum, that would be 10,000.
and I think I would leave it at that at this point. I mean, you offer the
Absolutely,
discussion
yeah.
about
Yeah.
changing the 10,000, but I'm not sure I would,
No,
we
I'm-
can support that at this point.
But I also like the fact that if you've got, multiple projects, each lot's less than 2,500, or each, then you do trigger the thing if you're doing multiple projects, or multiple lots as part of a single
Mhm.
project.
I think that was thrown in there specifically back in the 90s, I believe, because people would use fill and borrow sites off-site. And they would say, that's not part of the project, it's a separate project, so it wouldn't get included. So, yeah.
And the only thing I had on it was changing it from 10 to 7,500 to discourage the practice. Well, then you just change what people do, and it goes down to we do just over the 7,500. So I don't know unless you get down to a point where it's too small to really get away with. I think I agree. Leave the 10,000, and besides that,
I mean, if somebody's playing games with this, they're gonna get a stop work order. That's a hell of a lot more trouble than getting a permit.
We,
They
as
shot
a,
themselves in the foot.
Yeah.
exactly.
as a practice, we try not to issue stop work orders. Seems to be a little too heavy-handed. Our code compliance official will work with people. But you'll be surprised at how many calculation sheets we receive. They'll fill it out. They'll realize that they're at 10,500, and then they'll go up and scribble stuff out and put it at like 99. And then they get caught in the field, and then we have this. There's back and
I
forth
don't have a
with them,
problem with
but-
stop work orders, if you're playing games like that. I mean, if you're doing the thing right, how much trouble is it to get the permit?
You can come in and leave with it that very same day. As long as you don't have plan review, that's the only catch.
What's that?
If you have plan review, we have to ship it out to our review agency, but other than that,
Well, I think the changes you've made here capture the biggest issue that we need to be dealing with at this point, which is those small lot
Yeah.
situations.
Yeah, as long as the town's okay with it.
Yeah.
okay. If that's the case, I'll go ahead and draft a complete amendment, work with Allison. There's some other cleanup language I wanna put in there, minor stuff, it's just because that ordinance hasn't been touched in a while, as a whole document. So I'll get that drafted and public hearing before you guys in the next couple months. Okay. Thanks.
So, just to make sure I didn't lose something there, we're not lowering from 10 to 7,500,
No.
right?
No.
That's, okay.
All right, and then the last thing would be the amendment to the personnel policy.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I am lost. Oh, hold on a second.
Uh-oh.
You and Jim gotta,
We were in the same meeting.
That was some,
upstairs.
that was some meeting you guys had.
I'm surprised Glenda is still smiling.
I have been found.
That's 'cause nobody had to call her name, she's hiding, that's right.
As you know, I have brought this forward to you at your December 16th meeting. A number of things culminated in the fact that to have me recommend you all defer action or consideration of this today's work session. Let me tell you, as best as I recall, what precipitated that. First, I have brought this forward as a regular action item at the board meeting, really as a work session item. But a group had worked on this revision. We were on the front end of a long break between Christmas and the organizational meeting and inclement weather, and I was just trying to be efficient with time. I apologize for that. This is definitely a work session item. Second thing is I didn't necessarily grasp the history of this, and could have done better, and I now have the history of this. And let me just kind of recap where we are. In 2000, prior to 2010, is that the practice of the county had been to pay holiday time, or basically double time, during inclement weather. That was a practice. It was not a policy. A policy came forward to the board to make the practice a policy, essentially to kind of, put the personnel policy, this inclement weather pay as it's called. Going and looking back at the meeting minutes and what other documents, the decision ultimately of the board was to not have any extra pay as part of those positions. I wasn't here for those discussions and things, and that was the outcome. I think some of the parts of the discussions I've had with John, Nikki, and Michael Cass, the three functions, parts of the public safety, is if the position is based on this as being a duty of theirs, then part of this is also factored into their salary. But there's a whole nother discussion about salary and competitive, and we're dealing with that aspect. But these positions are types of positions that are compensated for being available regardless of whether general county government is open or not, and if they're scheduled, and they're also subject to callback at any time. The decision of the board back in 2010 was not to additional compensation. There certainly was strong support in the sheriff's office and other fire and EMS and such to bring that proposal back in a kind of a revised way, and that's what you have before you tonight, is the work of this group between finance, the county administration, and 911, sheriff, and fire and EMS. Certainly looking for some guidance and discussion from the board. I'm going to look at my colleagues here, Nikki or John. Did I miss anything, or Glenda, in recounting that, or did I? Okay.
So is this, I just.
Oh, and Tom was.
I want to make one clarification, just so that we lay the sheriff's position. You had made the comment that the pay is factored in. The sheriff's office said that they didn't believe that was true. For example, the sheriff's office said that the sheriff deputy who works security at the courthouse, who gets the snow day off, makes the same pay as the sheriff's deputy who's gotta be out on the road in the snow day. And so the sheriff's office actually took issue with the idea that it was factored. I just wanted to add.
Thank you. Tom was part of this discussion too, because of the Fair Labor Standard Acts, and we wanted to do.
So the sheriff took issue with whether we in fact factored in additional pay to people that were what we considered essential, because the sheriff's deputy working the courthouse makes the same pay as the deputy working the road.
So I guess this is brought back to you in a work session environment for
Well,
discussion guidance.
Is this essentially then the same thing we got in December?
Yes.
Says there's not
There-
even
there are no
anything
changes.
updated, yeah. Yeah, I think I would challenge that on the basis that there are, I don't think the only, let's see if I can say this so it makes sense to me. That may be true in weather. I think there might be cases where it would, you know, where in fact the deputies at the courthouse are also essential and would have to be there maybe when somebody else didn't have to be somewhere else. I can't believe that sheriff's deputies are not, at the courthouse, are not considered essential. And so they may get a day off somewhere because of snow, but that doesn't mean they're not essential.
Well, I think there was a scenario in a real one where the judge says, well, I don't care about, we got a huge docket we're opening up, then those deputies will have to report to work even though general county government's closed.
And I'm willing to bet that if there were a major weather event and the sheriff was running from one end of the county to the other, keeping things going, that those deputies would probably be repurposed to a road deputy position.
Or filled in as backfill to
Right.
those. Yeah,
Right.
I think that was part of the discussion too. They're not off just to be off kind of thing, because the courts are closed, but
Yeah.
they're also called
I
out.
mean, my concern is not, I have no problem with, you know, with compensating people for, when they do, overtime or extra work or whatever, but I just don't think it should be happening on both ends of the equation. And one of the ideas of the pay and classification, plan, which we've had for a long time now, is to take these kinds of things into consideration. I mean, you pay somebody based on what their job description is.
Yes, and they're working a hazard duty job. That's what they're being paid for. They're not being compensated for working non-regular hours. Not being compensated. According to the Fair Labor Standards Act, if you take two people and one of them is off without having to take leave, is the best way of saying it, then the other one, if they're working the same schedule, if the other one is required to work, they have to be compensated for working in addition to their normal salary.
So if the Orange, like, if there's an event at the Orange Library and they gotta shut down for a week, those employees would continue to be paid, would they not?
They should be
Would-
relocated.
They should be relocated? Where are we relocate them to?
To one of the other buildings to do their job, whatever.
Yeah, part of the confusion, I think, there's a couple of moving parts here. There's the administrative leave question, but then there's also the actual compensation, the time and a half question. And those aren't exactly the same. They're triggered, they could be triggered by the same events, but they're not exactly the same concepts. I think it's sort of
I just have a problem when you're hired to do a job and you understand that you are in an essential job. And all you're being asked to do is your job. I have a problem with you being then compared to somebody else who was not hired into that, who was not hired into that position.
Well, the only question you got, I mean, like in the real world, the non-governmental world, if I shut the plant down because it's weather, no one gets paid unless they wanna use vacation time. I, however, am expected at some point to get there and actually open the place up. But I get paid for that. But, you know, and that was
So what you're
defined in the job.
what you're saying is that, the essential workers are, when they're hired, they're expected to work on snow days and on bad weather days and et cetera. I mean, that's a part of the, job description, is not to stay home on snow days. That's what that's the point you're making.
That is the point that I'm making, yes.
Okay.
Or
All right.
it's certainly always been my understanding that the pay, and Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, we talked about this back in December, and I think did you ever get with John Ansavino and talk to him, quiz him on that particular point?
It's not jumping back up at me, but whether this practice of pay was typical or.
Well, whether or not that is part, no.
Whether the
Whether
only-
this is part of when they grade the position, the fact that it's an essential position.
the essential part is factored in because they're comparing it like to like, road
Well,
deputies to road deputies.
If they're comparing it like to like, then these people will still get the time and a half. I've worked in 4 different jurisdictions in the Commonwealth of Virginia, and all 4 of them pay time and a half. Some of them screwed up and paid double time and a half for a while, but time and a half to the people that are required to work when everybody else is off because of a snow event or whatever.
Well, I'm not, and this board's not responsible for what other jurisdictions do.
No, but we
But-
are responsible for treating the employees of the county.
But you can't give someone a pay raise for it being in an essential position, and give them a pay raise based on that, and then give them time and a half. I mean, you can't, it's not right to get it on both ends, is all I'm saying. I don't have a problem with them being, I think they should be compensated for it. I don't have a problem with them being compensated, but I don't think it should be compensated on both ends.
They're not being compensated.
Well,
They're being compensated.
I don't know if they are not, that according to the county administrator, they are, because the fact that they're essential is being factored into their pay and classification.
One of the things I think led to some confusion, I'm looking at Glenda and Nick, is that our pay roster, our personnel complement, our roster, really didn't clearly articulate who was essential and who was non-essential, right? And didn't we have that problem that we were trying to correct?
I think, you know, in one of the earlier Springstead studies, they determined which positions were essential versus
Non-essential.
And I noticed in one of the older policies that, you know, really talks a lot about essential versus non-essential. But as far as, on like our position control where we show our ranges, there was nothing on there that would identify, which positions in a particular pay band were essential versus which were not.
Which I'm trying to work back to the question of, as the analysis shows, where the connection is to an essential employee that would be subject to working regardless of whether the general county government is closed or open.
I might make a comparison of volunteer EMTs. It doesn't make any difference whether it's snowing or not. We're out there doing our thing. Of course, we could get time and a half and it wouldn't make any difference.
We'll give you double time. Yeah.
But what I'm saying is that, you know, that's, maybe a little bit of a corollary to Teal's discussion about the private sector.
Yeah, it's kind of the difference between hourly employees and salary. And I would consider essentials would be salary. If something happens, you get paid. If you have to be there, well, you get paid, but you have to be there. So, I don't know how to, differentiate it here, but I kind of agree is getting compensated again for what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, And there's, I think there's a little bit of a conflict in the language, because in one place it says, if you're scheduled, if you're, and I'm only talking about the, essential, non-exempt, because they're the only ones that get extra money. If I remember it right, it says something to the effect that if you're scheduled to work and you're essential non-exempt, then you report to work as scheduled. But then later, when it talks about the compensation, it says if you're required to work. And it makes a distinction, I think, between, almost as if you get called in unexpectedly. And so I'm not sure what we're trying to say.
Wasn't there a big
There is a
discussion?
distinction. The sheriff had part of the meeting with the sheriff was, his response was, I mean, the deputies are essential. He goes, but anybody that I tell to come in on that day is essential. And he said, so if, you know, if the snow, depending on what's going on, he said, my whole staff, he said the essential, non-essential sort of non-issue to him and non-starter, because he said, I'm gonna tell whoever I need to come in. And so that's where the difference between scheduled versus required to come in, even if you weren't scheduled. That's where
In
that
his
language
case,
came from.
those snow days are worse than the normal days.
I mean, one of the things that actually got me to thinking about this was the fact that very often in my business, people will be talking to me about what kind of tires they need, and I will ask them, do you work in a position that is essential? Are you a nurse? Are you a doctor? Are you a nurse? Are you EMT? And if they say yes, then I'm going to say, well, you need this tire over here that costs $600 as opposed to this one here that costs $300. So there are built-in upfront costs to taking an essential job. I mean, if you live down at the end of a 1,000-foot driveway, you got to make sure that driveway is going to get plowed. You got to make sure. So maybe it means you've got a tractor and a plow, or a plow on your truck. In other words, there are built-in upfront costs, and it occurred to me that we really should be compensating those people up front for taking on that responsibility. So again, I am not in any way arguing against fair compensation, but I feel like that we're doing it up front, and then we're doing it on the back end too.
So the question is, in terms of the compensation study, is that those essential jobs factor in the fact that they've got to show up all the time?
Yes, what are they saying, why are these people being compensated more? What is the reason for additional compensation? Is it for a shorter life expectancy? Is it for working more hours and not getting any additional compensation for it? There are a lot of things that go into, especially public safety, in regards to the compensation and the overtime, time and a half, whatever you want to consider. They are just getting compensated because the other people are not having to take leave and they're off. They are getting compensated at half rate to be working instead of sitting at home.
From the sheriff's perspective, I guess they probably should have been here today. From the sheriff's perspective, that Mike Lacasse anyway, I think one of their biggest issues was a morale issue, which is related to what you're saying, that, you know, you got a bunch of staff being paid to stay home and my guys are out. And so a lot of their argument was morale based.
And thank you, because the word I was trying, was perspective. It was that you're being, those that are non-essential, General County shuts down, they're being paid without any production. There's another group of employees that are out playing for production and aren't being otherwise compensated over and beyond what they would have if the sun had been out.
Well, of course, one option is to go with the private sector thing, which is if the county shuts down, then no one who works gets paid. That would be one option. Use the Teal Goodwin example. We call that the Goodwin rule, perhaps. But in all seriousness, the problem there, and you know, I've never been one to worry overly about not speaking my mind. You know, if you got two 10-year-old boys and you give them each a cookie in the morning, and one of them eats the whole cookie and the other one eats half of his and saves the other one until afternoon, when he's eating that second half, the first one's gonna have a morale problem. So morale problems, if they're based on, I hope somebody followed that analogy. If morale problems are based on actual verifiable inequities, that's one thing. But if they're based on the fact that people are forgetting that they're already getting paid more,
My question is.
then I think that needs to be explained better so they don't have morale problems.
Well, and I guess that's what I was going to say, just a second, Nicky. This is where, if you look at the people that are having to come in and work, the dispatchers, the firefighter EMTs, the sheriffs, to the best of my knowledge, the 30 years that I spent in public safety, I was being compensated for a shortened life expectancy, for not being with my family on a regular basis, all of these other things, not for having to work when other people were being paid to stay home. That's where the inequity.
And I understand that, and I'm not suggesting that this is the only reason they're getting paid more. I would think there might be several things why they're being paid more. But I come back to the original point, which is when they do the pay and classification study, if they're saying, okay, this person is essential, which means they're going to have to work when it's bad weather, and so that bumps them from a grade 15 to a grade 16, then I would say they are being compensated not for a shorter lifespan, not for
And if that is
that.
how it is explained, I have no issue with that.
Okay.
Well, maybe a suggestion is that we, and I think we've already done this, is surveyed our market area, just like the pay and classification, and see if there's this inclement weather pay for these essential employees, whether this practice is done elsewhere. I mean, I think it's done in a few of the other.
Well, there's some interesting words already in this policy that says essential employees must report to work to ensure public health and safety or critical departments are met. And then it goes on to say personnel whose attendance during inclement weather or emergencies is considered a condition of employment. So it's, and now whether it follows that there's a consideration compensation-wise or not, I think what we have to check. But I think we're setting these people apart as a distinct category,
Well, I think the one thing, I mean.
rightly or wrongly.
I think what we've all agreed on is that for that type of work, there should be a differential upfront.
Yeah,
Right.
if you're essential, yes.
The question then is, are we meeting that initial obligation? And that, I think we go back to the actual compensation study, and if we're not, then that should be adjusted.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if we are, then we have two options. We either have three, I suppose, because we could vote to give it to them both ends. But the other option, we could say, okay, we'll take away the bump at the beginning and we'll give you the bump when you have to work, or we can leave it the way it is. But to me, Brian, it's not how Madison's doing it or how Louise is doing it. That's not my concern. My concern is when the company that does the Springstead, how I cannot remember that, I don't know. When they do their factoring, are they giving a bump for that?
Okay. And that's.
And we can tell them, don't give a bump anymore, we're gonna handle it another way. But I think that would be kinda strange,
Or
but
what
we
is
can
the
do
bump
that.
being given for? I think that needs to be defined.
No, I'm talking specifically about a bump for being an essential worker, not for the shortened lifespan, not for any of that, but is there specifically a bump in recognition that you're gonna be working when some other people get a snow day?
If I may, though, the pay and classification study is going to be based on the surrounding jurisdictions, so the policy the surrounding jurisdictions have as to this other issue, it theoretically is related
And
to
that's
the pay and
what
classification.
I'm thinking it is.
They are
We don't need to look at it.
potentially interrelated.
But if he's saying, I'm looking at the base pay, and half of them have a bump, half of them don't, then sort of you flip the coin.
Well, yeah, there's a
But-
way, yeah. I'm sorry.
But if the majority of them, and the basis for the study says the majority of them don't have a bump, then we're saying that that's, it goes back to your argument, that they're getting it up front. And if the majority of them have a bump, they're saying that would say the classification is based on that. So I think your question to him in originally getting that clarified would deal with it.
Well, there's some anecdotal information. I mean, a grade 12 working at the landfill is paid the same as a grade 12 deputy sheriff.
You had
Except-
something, Ricky?
No, so when you actually captioned my thought process perfectly in your
Okay,
motion.
okay. I just figured I'd get all the information because we're just about time to go.
The problem with that, Jim, is you don't know, that doesn't really tell you anything. Because it could be that there are other reasons that the landfill guy is where he is. I mean, that, you know,
But-
hazardous, it's, you know.
I picked up the
Seagull
let me
duty,
pick,
I
let me
don't
pick on
know.
librarians then.
All right.
I mean, one of the problems here, I guess what I'm saying is that it's very hard, it's very hard to just look at the pay and classification plan and know what it's based on.
It is.
Let me do this, and Mr. Johnson's question to me back in December, when I wasn't responsive as I should have been, I guess goes to the heart to it, is how does the compensation study take into account if we're looking at, you know, is this an additional compensation or is it base pay? Let me kind of work through that. I know we're doing other work with the compensation study, and I don't want one to get ahead of the other, but oh, gee, I get like one time of the year. So I take the sense of the board on this one is we'll defer this and come back with some more information.
Thank you.
Okay.
Be an excellent idea.
All right. But I have, I guess, general information I need to get.
Tell the sheriff next time he's gotta defend his own position.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what he was here earlier today, so.
Yeah, you're sitting over there and going, I'm just a lawyer, I'm getting beat up like a sheriff. Does that go for the fire chief as well?
They're there,
I
they
think
defend
so.
themselves.
He was very quiet during that.
Did I, you know,
The sheriff and
I've got
Michael
2 seconds.
Castle are most outspoken.
You okay?
Yes.
Did I miss anything?
Well, I do think it comes down to the perception and also, I'll just use the example of our people, a lot of times will actually come in the night before to ensure that they're actually here. And the small amount of, money that we're talking about here, would go a long way in encouraging people to continue with, that type of behavior, not to mention what actually happens during some of these weather events.
I'm good. Thank you. Thank you, John. All right.
It is here.
Can you handle it?
Be careful with that
How
now.
do I hold?
Which end do you hold, huh?
Test it first by knocking it on your head.
I'm trying to think how many times I've actually been able to do this. I throw the training wheels off. All right, I'll call.
And you're on the clock too.
Yep. I'll call the organizational meeting of the Orange County Board of Supervisors today. First order of business is your organizational meeting. It's the election of the chairman. I will take nominations for chairman.
I would nominate Mr. Frame.
Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, I close nominations and call for the vote. We have a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Crozier? Mr. Frame?
Aye.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Gotta be some drama.
Mr. White?
Aye.
And Mr. Goodwin?
Hell no.
He's your nominee. What do you say?
It's unanimous. Mr. Frame is chairman, and I will very quickly turn this over to him.
That's pretty good. 58 seconds.
Did I do all
You
right?
had all that power.
I didn't let it go to my head.
We'll trade chairs again, didn't we do this?
Didn't we do this 3 years ago? Yeah.
I was
gonna sell it,
Yeah. I think that was your,
You may actually want to trade chairs because you may not like the way that one's sitting.
Your coffee cup, sir.
one of these is down on the floor.
I know, they're,
Take my candy.
boy, you're good.
Well, I thank you for your confidence in me.
All you have to do is earn it, right?
Next item of business is the election of a vice chairman. Do you have a nomination?
I nominate Mr. Goodwin.
Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, roll call.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
Mr. Goodwin,
Sure.
Mr. White,
Aye.
Mr. Crozier,
Aye.
and Mr. Frame.
Aye. All right. Second, next item of business is the appointment of the clerk and chief deputy clerk.
It's gonna be a tight race this year, I think.
I nominate these same people.
All right, I have a nomination. Any other nominations? All right. Nominations be closed. Can I get a roll call, please?
Mr. Goodwin,
Aye.
Mr. Crozier,
Aye.
Mr. Frame,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
and Mr. White.
Aye.
All right, next item on the thing is the determination of a tiebreaker. Is anybody interested in establishing a tiebreaker?
No.
We never do we?
Nope. Let's move on to the next item. Determination of the 2015 regular meeting schedule.
And we did move those meetings in December, right? The first and third. Didn't we do? Yep.
Yeah, first and
Okay.
15th.
First and 15th.
Right.
Move to approve as is.
Do we have a motion?
Second?
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Published 2015 meeting schedule is approved. Next item is the, what others?
Bylaws.
Bylaws.
Yeah, bylaws. Any interest in changing the bylaws?
I'd like to change that they're not adopted yet, that it was still a draft before we adopt them, since it states that they were already adopted. Says that they were adopted already.
Says they were adopted today.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, that's in red though, so that means it's
Okay.
tentative.
Okay, so tentative.
Doesn't
Okay.
count until it's in black.
So what you really wanna change the red to black.
That's right, I'd like to change the red to black.
All right, is that your motion to,
Absolutely.
You wanna adopt these?
I so move we adopt.
do we have a
Okay.
second?
Second.
Second.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, no changes in the bylaws. Next item is the appointment of board members to various boards, commissions, committees, and organizations.
I'm more than happy to maintain what I had with the exception of emergency management, which becomes yours.
I have a real problem with doing anything that's not in the evening or on a Tuesday, so, that's my limitation. I think the Rappahannock River Basin Commission and the Thomas Jefferson Community Criminal Justice Services Board both meet during the day, so I really can't do them. I have no idea what my portfolio is as the VACO legislative liaison. It certainly sounds like it would pay well, but I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do.
I think that might have been a legacy kind of position. I think.
It certainly
practice-
sounds like one, yeah.
Practice has been that as General Assembly, then I'll push out information to you all and certainly coordinate back with our senator and delegate, so,
Do we even need that on the list then?
that's
Doesn't sound like it.
well, and trying to,
I like shortened lists.
knowing
So-
that that's the way you,
Any objection to crossing that off the list?
No,
None.
it's already done.
So done. Okay.
I'm not trying to shirk some of the responsibilities, so if there's other things that, I don't know if there's other things that can be, shifted onto me that are evenings or are not dependent on outside, region-wide where we can't control the meeting date.
if I could,
I feel kind of bad only having Gordonsville Town Council liaison on my list here.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, the Basin Commission and the Criminal Justice Service Board, as I best recall, these are statutorily created by the state, and so there's like a governing, member of the governing body or their designee type of thing. We explored the Rappahannock River Basin Commission, not that I'm looking for anything, but some of these, if I can do in my normal course of affairs, I certainly would offer it up. That's one that it's actually a member of the governing body. I'm not eligible to serve.
Okay.
Which one is that?
The Basin.
The Basin Commission, okay.
Because it's a creature.
When
of
do
the
they
state.
meet?
During the day.
Not on a Tuesday.
It's a monthly or it's a every other month kind of cycle that they do meet.
What do they do?
They are looking over water quality and land use and development issues in the Rappahannock River Basin.
So it sounds to
do-
me like a farmer.
There's a lot of
Do we have one of those?
Am I getting smaller?
Eldon James is the executive director, and he's come before. Remember, there's a river gauge matter, and we do give them some funding. I don't think it's much.
I may have a conflict of interest because I'm trying to do some of their program, not theirs. But sure, I mean,
Okay.
I'm on the Lake Anna Advisory Committee, might as well,
Might as well stay with the water, huh?
Yes.
worry about the rivers that are flowing into it, so.
All right.
Remind me of
And
that, Allison, please.
The Criminal Justice Services Board.
I don't even know what that is. Does anybody have any idea what that is?
No, these were ones that I inherited them when,
Yeah.
and so I have no idea really what they do.
I saw those words and it didn't mean a thing to me.
I'm trying to remember what it was.
There's Criminal Justice Services are the unit that is signed with probation officers and the Court Services Unit that's over there and deals with this. I'm assuming this is a citizen or a governing body input into that work or something close.
Can we reserve judgment on that one and find out some more about it?
Yeah, let's read.
Let me look more into that one. I think it's statutorily created, and whether a governing body or a member of the governing body or their designee, which I certainly would be eligible for. Let me look into that and I'll bring that one back.
All right. You want to remain school board, Teal?
Yeah, that's fine with me. I mean, that one's convenient because unless Judy changes, we're
Okay.
conveniently located 4 doors apart from each other, so.
I'm looking at, I don't have any problems with any of the other ones I've got. How about you, Jim?
Y'all threw me in the lion's pit last year. I've gotten accustomed to it, so I have no problem with what I have.
Wow, that was the only one I was worried about.
I figured I made it through the first year. It's
All right.
no problem
Okay.
with it.
Is the water committee still in any way, shape, or form active?
No.
Why don't we strike it from the list then?
I don't have a problem with that.
That's fine. I think we'd always just kind of left it there in case something happened.
Well, we can always get back to it. I mean,
No.
Okay.
I think Lee was just
It
using
was the easiest
Patty's
committee I was
resume
on.
there. He was trying to get up into double digits.
All right,
He is in double digits.
okay. Anything else?
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate having internet capability here. Let me tell you what the Criminal Justice Community Service Board does. 19 members from this judicial circuit, General District Court, all the judges, juvenile, JD&R, Chief Magistrate, Chief of Police, Commonwealth Attorneys, and this is from all over. One citizen from each one of the localities, that's Charlottesville, Albemarle, Fluvanna, Kuchel and Green, Louisa, Madison, Orange, and Nelson, plus a member of each governing body or a city or county manager, county administrator, or executive, or assistant or deputy appointed.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Thank you for
Congratulations.
volunteering.
Congratulations, Brian. You're gonna do
To
well.
oversee the operation of the Community Diversion Incentive Program, which is funded by the state to divert nonviolent felons to community service treatment and or.
You're uniquely qualified for that.
Congratulations.
Perfect solution.
Okay.
Glad to serve.
All right. So let me me read through this. This puts Mark as the Gordonsville Town Council liaison. Jim, you've got Rappahannock River Basin Commission, Route 3 Steering, Fleet Subcommittee, and the Lake End Advisory. Teal, you've got Vice Chairman, the Airport Commission, EDA, Downtown Alliance, Town Council Liaison, and School Board Liaison. Jim, you've got the Planning District Commission, Solid Waste Committee, Orange County Planning Commission, and Volunteer Fire Chiefs Association. That leaves me as Chairman, Fleet Subcommittee, Lake of the Woods Liaison, the Health Center Commission, Solid Waste Committee, EDA, the Workforce Investment Board, Tourism Liaison, and the Steering Committee. Does that cover it? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right.
It's unanimous. Okay. All right. So now let's proceed with our regular meeting. Okay. Would you join with me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Lord, guide the leaders of Orange County. Grant them insight, courage, compassion, and imagination. Protect them from corruption and arrogance, and guide them as they seek to serve your people. Amen. All right. Next, adoption of the agenda. Any changes to the agenda?
I have none, Mr. Chairman.
So moved.
Anybody else? Motion, and do I have a second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion adopted unanimously. Special presentations and appearances. Employee of the quarter, Mr. David.
Our first quarter 2015 Employee of the Quarter joined the Orange County team a little over 2 years ago. Originally hired part-time, this employee has filled the duties of a full-time employee, volunteer, and fundraiser as vacancies existed outside of work. She is a stay-at-home mom who's very involved in the PTA at her children's school. Also, as an extremely dedicated volunteer with the Orange Humane Society, she spends countless hours volunteering at PetSmart adoption events and many other adoption events. Some of these events she developed on her own accord in an effort to try and get the county's homeless animals placed in permanent loving homes. Upon the resignation of the previous animal shelter director, this employee willingly took over as interim director, even though she was a busy mom, volunteered with the school and the Humane Society, and was working part-time. She did all those things necessary to see the shelter operated as expected during the transition and its directors. When she stepped up, the emergency vet fund was $12,000 in the negative, just 2 weeks before year end. This employee immediately contacted the Humane Society, who gave $5,000, and then contacted several people and was able to raise enough funds to balance the account with donations. She is the administrator of the shelter's Facebook page and has spent countless hours at home on her own time talking to people and finding homes for our pets. She's also the shelter's volunteer coordinator and works with them to ensure they are happy and have what they need, always greeting the public with a smile on her face. I think we can agree she is a huge asset to the shelter. It is with distinct pleasure, Mr. Chairman, that I present to the board our employee of the corner, Ms. Gina Jenkins.
Gina, thank you so much for what you do for all of us. I know that, in fact, I have a little dog from the shelter. Anyway, again, thank you so much, and you well deserved, and the whole county appreciates you.
Very much.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I take a little prerogative. When we were going through the transition with Beth Hamilton's departure, Gina, really, I leaned on her quite a bit, and she stepped up, absolutely, and I certainly am indebted for that. And she's helped Jenny Strong with her transition. And Next, Mr. Chairman, we have service awards. We have two people to be recognized today. First, who is here, Mr. William Bill Strong, with our Building Inspectors Department with 10 years of service.
Congratulations, and thank you for all you do for the county. All right, and for the people of the county, making sure we all stay safe.
Try to.
Thank you, Bill. And not able to be with us today is Michael Shiflett, who is a collection attendant with our solid waste landfill activities operations in 5 years of service. And that's all I had, Mr. Chairman.
Next item is Business Spotlight. Mr. Graves,
Hello.
Briarwood Florist.
I warn you now, I'm used to speaking to the garden club, not to gentlemen in ties. And I don't think what I do compares to what Gina does. That's pretty amazing. My name is Gregory Graves, and I am the owner of Briarwood Florist here in Orange County, Virginia. We're located in the historic Silk Mill building. My father opened up in 2004, and he retired 2011 and left the shop to me. And since then, we have turned what was a backroom florist into a 15,000 square foot retail space and another 15,000 foot for designs. We do about 2 to 3 weddings a week. We do flowers for the local restaurants. A lot of the bed and breakfasts support us and use us. And with that space, we're pretty much able to do any size event that's sent our way, we can accommodate. The other exciting things that's going on at the shop now is our delivery range has broadened. We have a 45-mile radius, so we're delivering daily from Charlottesville to Locust Grove to Culpeper to Zion's Crossroads. And now we're able to keep that at $7.50 across the board. Anywhere you want us to go, we're able to take your flowers for the $7.50. Also, with the buying power my parents have had, because we've been using the same grower since 1972, we're able to offer constant deals like a dozen roses for $9.99. You probably see our sign on the street there at Subway, blowing in the wind if it's not knocked over from the storms. When Hallmark went out of business, I felt like one of our duties was to pick up a lot of the vendors that people in Orange County had gotten accustomed to having, such as Yankee Candle, Colonial Candle, and then we noticed there was a market for baby clothes and body care products, so we brought in vendors from Up With Paper for stationery, Gianna Rose Adler for fine soaps and body care. For men, we have Urban Cowboy, which is a vegan body care for men. We also carry chocolates. Gerhard's out of Charlottesville produces our signature truffle, which has our logo on it. You can't miss it. And then Nancy's Candy Company up in the Blue Ridge Mountain has started sending candy our way, so we have some of hers in there as well. A few of the other things that we like to pat ourselves on the back is using local growers here in the Orange County. For instance, Liberty Mills provides us with about 6 acres of fresh flowers all throughout the year, and now we've started stocking things like their popcorn, which is amazing. No salt, no butter, just put it in a brown paper bag. And we're starting to reach out and learn more about local products that are made here, and we're putting them on the shelf as fast as we can, and they're going off the shelf. So I would recommend anybody come in anytime, and you'll find something. Born and raised here, I think I have a pretty good eye on what everybody's looking for. You can come in and tell me if I missed something, and I'll see what I can do about putting it on the shelf. I think that's about all I can say. Do you guys have any questions?
When are you going to expand your name? From Briarwood Florist, you need to become Briarwood Florist and everything else.
I want to shorten it. I would like to just be called Briarwood. Because, when people think of Briarwood Florist, you're right, sometimes I feel like they drive right by us. We're so much more than that. We carry houseplants for, the garden enthusiast. We carry cookware, your napkins, your paper plates for the birthday parties, and just about anything that you'd be looking for to just kind of decorate and better your environment. We're going to have it on the shelves.
You sound like you're having fun.
I am having fun. I tried to get out of this business when I was a teenager or in my 20s and went into culinary and thought I was going to become a chef. And I was head chef at one restaurant, and then right back in the florist business I went. My parents owned Colonial Florist in Gordonsville, and we lived above the florist there. And then, you know, years later, more florists opened up, and Dad was the first to retire, so that door opened up, and there I am.
Very good.
Do you guys have any more questions?
Mighty impressive.
Yeah.
Impressive, thank you. Come in, check it out.
Thank you very much.
You guys have a great evening. Thanks.
Surely.
There's a few bags out there for you. You guys, thanks for listening.
All right. Next item is the report on National Radon Awareness Month. All right.
I should have a presentation that goes with this, okay. My name is Ryan Paris. I work for the Virginia Department of Health, Office of Radiological Health Enrichment, so I'm from the government, I'm here to help. But January is National Radon Action Month, and my job is to increase awareness of radon throughout the Commonwealth, so that's why I'm here. Thank you for having me.
It should be at the bottom there.
With the arrows? Oh, PowerPoint. Okay, there it is.
And then
Slideshow.
from the beginning.
Here we go. Oh, what happened? Still not taking up the whole screen. Oh, it is there. Okay, very good. All right, so just got a brief little primer here on radon in Orange County. You should be aware that Orange County is officially designated as a high-risk area for indoor radon. So I'll just tell you a little bit about it. Radon is real. The EPA didn't make this up. It's been known about for a long time. You know, it does have a short half-life, only about 4 days. It is a very heavy gas. You breathe it in. The next steps in a very long decay chain are known as radon decay products. They're actually poloniums, and they are solids. If you breathe those in, they can actually stick to the inner tissue of your lungs. All three of these emit alpha particles, which can do a lot of damage to your tissue and can eventually lead to lung cancer. So that's the primary risk of prolonged exposure to radon. It can lead to an increased risk of lung cancer. How does it get in? If you look at this diagram, follow the red arrows. Basically, anything that's going to let soil gas come in through the foundation, gaps, holes, cracks, a sump pump is a very likely avenue because hardly any sump pumps are ever built with an airtight lid. It can actually get in well water on occasion and get into the house that way. So there are many different avenues. The key thing is you've got to have the right type of bedrock somewhere in the area, and the soil between the foundation and the bedrock needs to be permeable, and you need to have a leaky foundation, an avenue for it to get in. And that can vary tremendously from house to house, even among houses on the same street sometimes. So really the only way to know if you got a problem is to test. I just put some numbers up here just so you have an idea what all these numbers mean. US indoor average about 1.3 picocuries per liter. Outdoor background levels about 0.4. The recommended action level set by the US is 4.0. Most other countries in the world now use about 5.3, 5.4. The overall trend over the last 20 years has been dropping. For example, Canada, their standard used to be 20. They have now dropped it back to 5.4. EPA set theirs at 4 back in the 80s. And now the rest of the world is coming back to that slowly but surely. If you have a house with a problem and you get it fixed, that's called mitigation, you have a reasonable expectation, usually you can get it below 2. You can't get it down all the way to 0 because you got radon and normal outside air, but you can usually reduce it below 2 in most cases. Here are the actual risk numbers, and it's tied to a 70-year lifetime exposure. That's a key thing to remember. But if you look at the numbers, 4 is the action level. If you're exposed to that for 70 years and you've never smoked in your life, you're looking at a lung cancer risk of about 7 per 1,000. That's a little less than 1% chance. Look at the numbers for smokers. They're much higher, at least 10 times higher. So if you smoke or if you have smoked in the past, it's even more important for you to test for radon because you're going to be much more at risk. But look at the numbers up here. It's thought that radon contributes to about 21,000 lung cancer deaths per year in the US. Probably almost 700 of those are in Virginia. So it's something to keep in mind. Here's the actual radon risk map for Virginia. Everything in red is considered high risk, and you see Orange County is considered high risk. A lot of our neighboring counties are too. That is something to keep in mind. You go farther east, most of these are low-risk areas. Orange is considered moderate risk. You cannot use this map to predict anything. It's just a rough guideline. Okay, so don't get caught in that trap. I hear from people all the time that say, I'm living in a low-risk county that borders high-risk counties. I must not have it, so I don't need to test. Not true. Geology does not follow these county boundaries. That was just for political convenience, okay? So everybody should probably test, especially if you're in a high or a moderate risk area. Here are some actual test numbers. As you can see, Louisa and Orange, and Spotsy has a little bit more, but there's not a lot of test results for this area. These were test results taken from one test kit vendor. And you see what the averages are from those groups. These are the percentages that tested below 4, the action level. These are the percentages that tested above 4. So you look at these, you're looking at about a 1 in 5, 1 in 4 chance in these areas that you're gonna have a high level in your home. So that's a pretty substantial risk. I've got a couple of further details here for zip codes in Orange County, and you can see the numbers for those. But you can see it is around. You really need to test for it if you haven't done so before. Here's what some of the test devices look like. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about those. Professionals use these and these. This is something you can buy in the store. Plug-in monitor gives you a real-time reading. Costs about 125 bucks. This is a long-term test kit that you can do yourself. That can go all the way up to a year. And that's important because radon levels show seasonal fluctuation. You usually get higher levels in the winter, lower levels in the summer. These are the activated charcoal test kits. I just dropped off 100 of these with your local health department for distribution to your citizens. And I might have a little gift for you all a little bit later if you haven't tested your own home. I got some free test kits here for you. Virginia law regarding radon, some things to remember. No law requires radon testing, even when you're selling the property. It's all negotiable between the parties. A lot of realtors put that as a contingency clause in their contracts, so it's becoming more and more common. Radon professionals are required by Virginia law to be certified by one of these two organizations. So if you need to find a professional tester or a professional mitigator to fix a problem, you go to these websites. We also are one of only about 10 states in the country that have a school testing law. All schools in the state, every classroom in contact with the ground needs to be tested at least once. How do you fix a radon problem? You basically have to put in a pipe that tries to draw the radon-laden gas out from beneath the home and then vents it up through a pipe up above the roof. There's a fan here that runs 24/7 to provide that suction. More commonly than running up through the interior now, they usually put this piping on the outside of the house. And a lot of people don't like the appearance. That's one of the problems. One thing that local governments can do to help address this issue, we do have a law in the books in Virginia that gives all the high-risk jurisdictions, be they independent cities or counties, and remember Orange County is a high-risk jurisdiction, you have the option of requiring radon-resistant new construction in all your new residential building, okay? But you have to actually do that. You have to take a step to do that. What it is, here's the actual reference right here. You have to formally adopt Appendix F of the IRC in your local building code. And so far, we've got about 46 eligible counties in the state that could do this if they wanted to. Only about 3 counties and several independent cities, all in the Roanoke area, have adopted this already. But this is important because this is really about the only way you can take a major step to stay on top of this issue. Because what that means is you're gonna mandate that the builder puts in that mitigation piping as the home is being built. And this is a passive system. You can hide the piping in the walls if you do it when the home is being built. So nobody has to look at it, either on the inside or the outside. You leave it without a fan, but you put an electrical junction box close to it. It's thought that putting this piping in during construction will reduce the radon level by as much as 50%. Okay? But you need to test the house after the construction is finished to see if it has kept the level down. If not, you call in a mitigator at that point. He goes up in the attic, cuts the pipe, puts the fan in, ties it into the electrical junction box. That costs you about $200 to do that, convert it from passive to active. If you have to put in an entire mitigation system from scratch on an existing house, could be $1,000 to $2,000. So you can save a lot of money doing this. And that's about all I have. And you can see some websites there for more information. So I'd be happy to take any questions. Yeah.
The testing company
Mhm.
you have, is that out of Florida or out of a different state? Do you know?
There are several different vendors. Most of them are located pretty far out of state. There is one in Florida, there's one in Texas, there's one in
What I
California.
was asking was.
The one we're using
Right.
actually is in North Carolina. That's the only one located in the Mid-Atlantic region at all. And that comes in handy because you need to mail these things back within, they have to arrive at the lab within 7 days after the end of the test. That does come into play. So without any further ado, any more questions?
I had another question. I had someone that saw this item on the agenda, and they were asking a question about retesting. Do you have any information as to how much variability one would get over a period of years? Let's say they tested 10 years ago.
Right.
Is there any reason that they need to retest, or can they assume the results are constant, or what can you tell us
Could
about?
depend on a couple things. Number one, the season of year you test plays a big role. Because if you want the worst case scenario, like January, middle of the winter, when it's gonna be at its highest, that's why they use January as National Rain and Action Month. That could give you a totally different result than if you tested in July. Okay? Because summer's the low time, winter's the high time. So you have to keep that in mind. What can happen to a home as it ages? If you got a brand new home, the foundation is likely to be pretty tight. But as the settling process occurs, more cracks, more openings are gonna open up. So as the home ages, it usually gets worse. And then after about 15 years, usually that settling process stabilizes. So that plays a role. If you disturb the foundation in any way, especially if you put in a drainage system with a sump or something like that, that could change the situation. Change the HVAC system, that could change the situation. Any type of heat that burns fuel draws air toward it, and that creates a suction, and it's gonna draw more radon into the home. Okay, so there are a lot of factors that could influence it.
Does the house being closed up for a long time increase the radon levels?
Not as much as you would think, because it does have a short half-life. It reaches a steady state fairly quickly. It might increase it a little bit, especially if the house is extremely tight, like some of the new homes are. But most of the older homes, they're not that tight, and it's not gonna keep building up.
But if you're in the summertime and you got your doors open and stuff like that, windows, your levels are gonna be lower.
Right, anything you can do to ventilate the home, especially the lowest level of the home,
So the basement would be much worse than the rest of the house.
because it is a very heavy gas. That is right. That's usually where you find the highest levels.
Now, although you're not required to do this, although some people are doing it in their, when they're buying a home, if you know that you're exceeding this becomes a disclosure item for your real estate?
Interestingly, radon and several other environmental contaminants used to be mentioned in the realty disclosure law, but they eliminated that verbiage
Really?
a few years ago.
Wow.
Not there anymore. They don't mention lead, they don't mention asbestos, nothing's in there anymore.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
all right.
so that is a problem. They kind of snuck that one by us. We didn't know they were doing that. And we're not happy about it. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Well, let me give you your test kit, if you'd like one. If you've never tested your home, get a freebie. These go for about $15 in the store, so if you want one, raise your hand, I'll give you one. And she has an instruction sheet.
I was gonna say, somebody, give us two for this room.
Give us a couple for the room here.
And don't worry about 911 dispatch, though.
And she has an instruction sheet that helps you avoid some of the common errors when you're filling these out. Okay. Anybody in the crowd want one? I got some left. Okay.
All right.
Never tested.
If it's greater than 4, do we get hazardous fees paid?
Yeah, I guess.
Appoint my wife to be the radon director for the house.
Okay,
Thank you so much.
thank you very
Thank
much, Brian. Next is the, Mr. Robinson. Comprehensive Annual Financial Report.
Hey, how are you? Thank you all for the opportunity to be here, and I echo his comments. As a man who bought a house in 2010 and didn't get a radon test, and spent $2,000 2 years later putting in a radon system. So, but anyway, I am here primarily for your benefit. So I'm going to hit on a few highlights that I have with regard to the audit, and I'm here to answer any questions that you may have to be informative to you, but I want to be respectful of your time. First of all, I'd like to say thank you for the staff of Orange County. You guys really have a strong staff. We started doing the audit, I guess, about 4 years ago. I think Glenda was new at that time, and you know, there's just been nothing but improvement every year. This year, the finance department spent a lot of time and effort implementing the new financial accounting system, which is a very good and strong system. It's doing a lot to improve controls, et cetera, and you know, I think they all should be commended for improving and trying to improve the operations of the organization. So. We expressed an unmodified opinion with regard to the CAFR. There was a minor delay at the end with regard to the sales tax issue that I'm sure you guys are all aware of, which I would like to point out. There is some commentary in this, but it was the county who brought that to our attention. So it was management who identified the issue, brought it to our attention, and has taken action as a result of that.
Is that anything you would ever look at yourselves?
Well, the formula, we look at variances, and you know, there should have been likely at the point, which we were not the auditor at the time, there likely should have been a differential in variance on sales tax because the calculation changed pretty dramatically, and I can't remember the year that goes back to.
And that would have been something that would have triggered your look?
It could have. I'm not going to say for sure that it would have, but it could have. But since that point, we've consistently looked at the variances. You know, sales tax rolls in. Often, I mean, we really focus on the revenue that the county collects and is shown as revenue, and we tie all those out. But truthfully, we have tied out what was paid to the localities with the assumption that those calculations were accurate and correct. But that was not the case. But you know, I think it does speak to the quality and improvement of county finance and administration of identifying an issue that has been ongoing for a number of years. And I think that is a definite sign of continuous improvement and focusing on what the major issues are. So I'd like to tell you, yes, we would catch it in that, but the reality is that that's a difficult thing to catch unless there's a significant change from prior years that would identify that. So, you know, I'm going to hit the comprehensive annual financial report that you have in front of you. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. We expressed an unmodified opinion, clean opinion, just like you've had in years past, best opinion you can receive. I would suggest that if you didn't make it any farther in the CAFR, at least read the management's discussion and analysis after our opinion. And the reason for that is really management telling you about changes in operations for the year, the reasons for those, and I think it's very informative particularly for members of the governing body. I recognize 150-page report can get quite cumbersome to get to the end of, but definitely make it through the management discussion and analysis. I'll focus on a couple of internal control comments later. And use the graphs for talking about the financials. With regard to single audit testing, we have to test federal funds every year. There were no single audit findings whatsoever with regard to federal funds, which is very good. It's pretty common that we have findings in those areas with local governments. And we had a minor comment, something that the state requires us to test at social services. So then the only real internal control issues, which we'll talk about here in just a moment, has to do with some segregation of duties issues, and then the sales tax issue. The unfortunate part of the sales tax issue is it was a material adjustment that we have to report a material weakness on, but I do want to make sure that everybody knows it's not something that Brown Edwards said, hey, you know, this is an error. It was county administration who identified the error and brought it to us and said, hey, this is something that's going on in our financials and need to adjust accordingly. So I do want to clarify that. So I will talk about the financial analysis, talk a little bit about the financial results. If you have that in front of you, it's just some charts and graphs and colors. And feel free to stop me at any point you want to have conversations or discussions about something. If you flip over with me, I'm just going to kind of go through the graphs, the level of net position, how does our operating equity look. Had a pretty good year this year. Sales tax or tax collections came in, I think, a little better than expected. The county increased net position $2.6 million, school board $943,000, and I go into some of the reasons as far as the primary reason for that. This is at a full accrual basis, the government-wide. Most people focus on the fund level, so I don't, this includes capital assets as capital and debt separated. It's not as important, I think, as likely the fund balance numbers that we'll focus on in some other graphs. Change in that position just summarizes what that change and gives you some historical information over time. Your level of budgetary fund balance, and this is what most governments care about, and that is how much fund balance, particularly in your general fund, that you have, and your level. And so we have some graphs where we compare your unassigned fund balance, meaning available for spending at discretion, has stayed consistently 34% of your annual revenues, and stayed pretty consistent since 2011. Your months of expenditures and governmental unassigned fund balance, that is, if you didn't collect another dollar today, how long could we continue at the spending path that we're on to support those expenditures? And your number is about 4.44, which is a strong number. I see some localities that have numbers as small as a half a month to a month, and I have some localities that have as much as 2 years. And the answer is if you have a very diverse economy and you're not really built on a particular industry that's really impacted, that if you lost a major industry, not just a company, but a major industry, then a higher level of fund balance is something that's necessary, because ultimately you lose that industry, economic conditions, et cetera. Then you obviously have a more significant issue to adjust, and it's difficult to adjust in your budget. I would say, knowing the Orange County economy, have a pretty diverse economy, different sources of revenue coming in. I think 4.4 months is a very solid number for you guys, and you're within. The most important things is you have some parameters and guidelines to follow with regard to fund balance, and you follow those, and that is the key component. Moving on, assets to liabilities. This just gives some percentage of equity, just kind of how much debt we have compared to the assets that we have. On page 8, the quick ratio. This is just how much cash that we have. That dropped pretty significantly for a good number is 1-to-1, and you guys are at 2.71 in governmental activities, your general fund and social service fund, and the business type 3.06. That dropped significantly in 2012, from 2012, because at that time you had accumulated funds for landfill closure. Rather than debt financing those, you accumulated, you did good at budgeting, set money aside, and you spent that money down for landfill closure and construction of new sale. So very strong there, nothing of concern. Page 9, capital asset condition. This is just taking what the assets are compared to the depreciation on them. It doesn't necessarily reflect a reduction in or major capital issues, but it could be an indicator of a need to address something. And I use, for example, on the right-hand side, if you notice, the landfill development costs were new in 2013 and 14. When the new landfill was built, it was put in service, and each year as capacity is used from that sale, that depreciation is taken. So if that red graph gets into the 50% range, or whatever number the county feels comfortable with, at some point you're going to have to start planning landfill cell construction. So give you a little background on what that graph is intended to show. Similar thing for school board. And here, since the county assets, if you have a school that has debt related to it, the county holds the assets equal to the debt amount on their books. The way the tenancy in common works in Virginia, it's not uncommon for localities to have a lower percentage at the school board individually. Your debt service load on page 11, you've had consistent decrease in that, which I think is good. I think you had some significant debt taken on a couple of years ago for some school construction, et cetera, but that as a percentage of your property tax revenues has declined downward, and your debt service expenditures compared to your non-debt service expenditures has also decreased. And I think that's a good place to be in, and there's nothing outside the norm here in terms of comparisons to other governments for those percentages. On page 12, this is how much bonded debt that you have per resident. And you've shown a consistent decrease there, which would be expected because, again, you had to make some pretty significant borrowings for school-related debt in past years.
When you calculated that, did you look at changing population as well?
Yeah, it is based upon the most recent Weldon Cooper numbers, I believe, that goes in the statistical section.
Okay,
Is that
all
right? So yes, it is calculated based upon that. So yes, if you have population growth and debt reduction and no due debt, then it's going to have a dual effect on that calculation. Your sales tax revenue, you did have actually a pretty significant growth in sales tax revenue. However, now that we know what the real sales tax number is, it'll be interesting to see what that number equates out to be going forward. So, but I can tell you across the state, almost no one had increases of this percentage, and some actually had decreases. The most I think I've seen thus far of the meetings I've done, and I've done I think 8 of these so far, is about 7%. So I think that is indication of good economic conditions and improving economic conditions in the county. And I think residents like the business that was here previously is a good example of that. Your full value per capita, this is just the assessed value of taxable property in the county divided by the residents. There was a reassessment, obviously, in 2012 that dropped that amount pretty significantly. Page 15, this is just your self-sufficiency. You know, an ideal ratio here would be 100%. However, your airport fund, that's particularly if you had a water fund, it would need to be self-supporting. Airport funds, quite frankly, are very reliant on federal government grants, particularly for rural airports, so it's not an uncommon percentage to be that low there. And your landfill, you know, you have always taken the approach of supplementing that landfill fund with general fund dollars. There's nothing wrong with that. You know, ideally, would it pay for itself? Sure, but that's a government decision that's made during budgeting decisions. Sometimes people take the approach that they want their garbage, waste haul, et cetera, to be paid for by itself, but as you know, in the business of trash, it's expensive, so it's not uncommon to have transfers.
What would you see other rural jurisdictions look like?
Well, honestly, most rural jurisdictions would not have a landfill fund separately. They would include it as part of their general fund. You guys have always kept it separate because I think you want to see what the impact of the landfill operations are. So there's not a ton of examples. And airports oftentimes, honestly, are also not included as a business type activities. Most business type activities at most localities are your water funds, your sewer funds, which you guys do not do here individually. It's through an authority, or if you have an electric utility. And I've seen a few other random ones. So, you know, it's hard to compare. You know, I think given the nature of operations in your business type activity funds, there's nothing of major concern there. So, if you move on to page 16, this is how much we spent per capita for the different functions, and this is not including, particularly the education line, only includes county funds. It does not include money that comes from state or federal sources. It's just county dollars spent. So as you can see, as is common for most, education is your highest, public safety is your second highest, and you go on from there. But again, this is just more for trend information. Page 17, school board intergovernmental revenues. You can see the blue is the amount of funds received from federal and state sources, and red is local. You did have an increase, a bump in that, I think, in 2013 as a result of budget requests from the school board, and for 2014, as a comparison to prior years, stayed relatively flat. And then on page 18 is just the amount of expenditures that you have per pupil, not including debt service on schools.
Is there a way of calculating the debt service as well?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, you would just, we know how much of the debt is related to schools. It would just be a spreadsheet of throwing that out. I'm sure that's something Linda could do for you if you like. So any questions, commentary on the financial analysis report? Okay. There is also a required communication with those charged with governments. I'm not going to go into any detail, bore you with it. If you want to go to sleep at night, it's a good place to start. And comments on internal control, you know, I'm not gonna highlight this. The only thing I will say, this is really a tool for management. That's the intended recipient of this. It, of course, is available to the governing body. You know, we have seen consistent improvement in internal controls every year. The only area, and we really highlighted this year and talked about it more, particularly in light of the other issues, I think the Treasurer's Office, quite frankly, controls could be enhanced there. There is a lot of authorization and controls in a very limited number of people. Now, with recognition that it is a small department and there's only so many people to segregate duties, I would like to see the Treasurer's Office provide more information to county administration and the finance department as a level of review. And that includes bank reconciliations being reviewed and approved by the finance department, wire transfers as well, and having a little tighter controls there, and also with regard to system access. With implementing the new software, a wider system access was necessary to get everybody set up and all the users, et cetera. We've had a discussion with Glenda and Matt at the schools now that has been implemented, dialing back that system access level. It really should be an IT function because, you know, with the roles that these people play, they do have access to financial resources. So in internal controls, if there's one area that I would suggest that the county spend some time trying to enhance, it would be within the Treasurer's Department individually.
You got specific, as I read, there were a lot of specific things that you recommended.
That's correct, yes. So,
And it sounded like that there were a number of things that we could do either with systems or procedures and the like without adding staff. I mean, that was the thing that I saw that was
yeah, I mean, I think,
interesting.
keep in mind the system, and now that you have changed, I can say this and not risk, you were on a very antiquated financial accounting software. I mean, it was extremely antiquated. And now you have moved into a new generation of software that has the ability to put controls in place electronically. And I think probably with some pushback and some pain along the way, which is going to be normal. But I think the county has, what I think is important about that is the county has said, nope, we got this system. We're going to use it to its capabilities. We obviously have to figure out ways that's workable for everybody, but why would we not use the system for its approval and maintaining those controls? And I think that is a very important part.
Were there specific recommendations on how to use the system for these internal controls?
There was some more general. It wasn't necessarily specific to go implement this in this specific system, but I think looking at the nature of the comments and seeing how with your new improved control structure and your capabilities, now take that and try to implement that into some of the areas that you have some deficiencies in. And I mean, and honestly, it's not uncommon for counties particularly to have weaknesses in internal controls, particularly when you have elected offices. The Treasurer's Office is there as a control. You have to remember that. It is a cash collection office and a billing function, and that is the purpose of the Treasurer's Office. The concern is that with a small department like that, you can only have so many people. I would like to see some additional communication between the finance, and I'm not saying that there's any ill intent or nobody willing to work together. I would just like there to be some purposeful working together to add a extra set of eyes on some things that otherwise was not there. But again, this is not something that's uncommon at all, particularly for counties. To answer your question in a roundabout way.
I mean, it sounds like we can go a long way toward addressing this issue without having to do what you guys very frequently want to do is, reduce span of control, which means adding staff.
Right.
And it sounds like we have an opportunity to achieve a lot without going to the point of adding staff.
And have achieved a lot. I mean, your control structure compared to what it was with the antiquated system, marked improvement.
How many people in the room have ever programmed in DOS?
Yeah.
I mean, I have, but look at me.
What's DOS?
I was gonna say, how many people know what DOS is anymore, Jim?
That's the system we left behind.
Yeah, it is. It was, it was just a very antiquated system.
Yeah, it gets worse.
So, but again, I don't think there's any ill intent. I don't think there's any willingness of nobody to work together. I don't think that's it at all. I just think, given size, that I would like to see a little more communication between the departments there.
Any other questions? All right, thank you, Ben.
Yeah, thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
What do we got next?
Lee, we have some people
Tourism.
reserved.
Yeah, tourism. How long is this gonna take?
Hour and a half.
Yeah.
What's for dinner?
Can you come back?
I can do it in 3.5 minutes.
That's it, I think it's about 3.5 minutes.
All right, okay,
We'll
that's
see
fine.
if we can't get it going.
Is that without your introduction?
It's without comments too, okay? Thank y'all for giving us the opportunity this evening to present our new Visit Orange County, Virginia video on behalf of the Friends of Orange County. I'd like to introduce right now David Skybel and Jay Billy. Give a little bit of background on the video, and they'll introduce the production crew, and then we'll get right into showing it to you.
Really won't take an hour and a half. The production guys, the Scene Alive guys, were sitting in the back. We started the Inn at Willow Grove, and we have a little stake in tourism here in Orange. And I started getting very interested in video storytelling a couple years ago, and we started doing videos for the Inn. And we felt that the future of the website would be more of what you can see. You know, a picture tells something but doesn't tell it all. And as we did more and more with these guys, I got very excited about what they could do. And I thought, well, gosh, the county doesn't have anything. And I went to Lee, sat down and talked for a bit, enlisted my good friend Jay, and we put a lot of work and effort into putting this together. Have anybody seen it yet? You have not. It's pretty incredible. These guys, it's Calvin back there and Eddie. They have done videos as far as, you just got back from Africa, correct? Yeah. I'd rather just turn it over and let you see it, because I think it's pretty cool.
What part of Africa?
Right
Yeah.
part.
I see no face mask.
Hold on before you get going, we're still getting it keyed up on these other monitors.
David, could you make a comment or two about the production crew, a little bit about how,
Yeah, in fact.
how they fit in and where they came from, or just
Yeah, it's Scene Alive. They're based out of Washington, D.C. They do storytelling. It's not just videography. They don't do weddings. The one thing they don't do. They like to get involved with their clients and actually learn what they're doing. They don't just show up the day of the shoot and get together and just take pictures. That's not what they do. They learn about the people and they tell a story. We've had several participants locally that, since we did our video at the end, they've hired them, and we're in talks with Hollow Ground, for a matter of fact, to do something for them. But it's more of a story, and they with the production, they're very artsy. They match the music. What we did here is a little different. Jay and I came together with Lee, and we said, you know, we don't want actors. You know, the first thing everybody wants an actor. So everybody here in this video are local business owners or employees, and they all did an incredible job. And it was a lot of fun to work with them, some more than others. Everybody was fun. Some were more difficult than others, but Jay and I directing traffic in Gordonsville to get Gerard so we could get his shoot done was absolutely hilarious. Jay, you want to get up and say a few things and tell you, if you will?
No, it's, yeah, I just think that it was a great project, and David really was spearheaded it all. And actually, moving into this project, I had no idea how it was going to come out, and it exceeded my expectations. So these guys back here, they did a professional job, and I'm proud to be associated with it.
You know, the interesting thing, we talk about private sector, the public sector, you know, we all want tourism here. I mean, you know, you talked about sales tax, and it's not all just Walmart. And tourism has exploded here, not just weddings, but everything from corporate events to people just coming for the day, for the wine things. Tourism is a huge part of Orange County, and to keep Orange County like it is today in our sector, okay? I know there has to be growth, but you know, because of things like this and people working together, because the businesses that we worked with were fantastic, and this was all privately funded. Didn't cost the taxpayers anything. All it's going to do is benefit the taxpayers. And we can also, as we work with these guys, you know, as things change, we anticipate updating the videos so it doesn't stay stagnant on a yearly basis. Bring new businesses in. And we actually, you know, some days Jay and Lee and I were out there and we'd say, oh my gosh, we forgot this one. And we literally show up and knock on the door, want to be in a video? And they were like, sure, it was all good. But we had a tremendous amount of fun doing it, and I hope you enjoy it. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay.
Wait a minute, you gotta turn the sound up too, hold on. You,
Ready?
you jumped in front of me.
Ready?
I had this all figured out, Jay, and Jay jumped. Where are the speakers?
They should be internal on the laptop.
Well, I've got it turned all the way up and it's not.
Turn off the lights so you can see it better.
The sound's not going though.
Those old-fashioned things called light switches.
The sound on the expanded all the way out.
The sound says it's all the way up.
Yeah, it should be all the way up now.
Mhm.
Nope.
No, there's no sound whatsoever.
Check
Do
the
y'all
one
have
down at
your-
the bottom on the screen there, Jay,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one that says it's all the way
all
up.
the way up.
is that the one you checked? Yep.
Mhm.
Yeah, we checked both of them.
There is some video turned up.
Hmm?
It's the same file we've had 2 weeks. But if you want that file, we can do it. I just think it's this.
Yeah, can you pull yours real quick?
Why have professionals?
That's right, that's why we have a backup
The
plan.
thumb drive.
That's why we have a backup plan.
Old school. We got it. Can I trust?
Always fails, Andrew.
You gotta always plan for it not to work.
Huh?
Yeah, that's right.
Hmm? I know. I'm trying this because I think the sound is off.
It's HDMI.
It's worth the wait, believe me.
Okay.
The problem is Lee touched it to begin with.
Yes, sir, Mr. Crowe. Whatever you say, Mr. Crowe.
I thought he beat you, Lee.
Oh, no.
no.
She knew where that.
I know
voice was
better.
supposed to
I
be.
knew exactly where that dart was being thrown.
I thought that was a spear more than a
Oh,
dart.
but I'm saying, do you want to click on this? See, I'm clicking test. Do you see how small it is? Where's your speakers?
They're in this laptop somewhere. That's it.
What do they come out? Is there an output? Or is it just coming out of all the TVs?
Just to the TVs.
Because
So how does everybody else's?
Well, you know, we can, Lee, you're on next, after, I won't have to keep everybody around here though until after the,
That's it.
public
They've
hearings.
gotta get back to DC, possibly.
Okay, so I can play it from mine. Do you have the login to get to the?
I could just give you the
Flash
flash
drive.
drive.
Okay,
Just
it will
flash
play
drive.
from this one
Okay,
and I can
perfect.
put it on the screen.
Okay, that'll work. However we have to do it.
This?
I asked him.
Where will the video be?
It's on our website. It's on visitorangevirginia.com, right on the front page.
Okay,
As a link, it's also going to be, as soon as we get our website upgraded, it's gonna be embedded as a video in our website and available for all businesses.
and it's on YouTube?
It's on Vimeo.
Vimeo, okay.
Mhm.
And we're gonna share it with all the local businesses and ask them to put it on their website, because
Mhm.
whatever business we bring here helps everyone.
That's correct.
No sound.
No sound
No.
still.
I don't know what's going on.
I don't
Yeah,
know.
I just played a video on YouTube and it was working.
Well, you can see it at least.
Yeah, but the music makes it all.
The music
It
and
does.
the
It's
voice.
unfortunate.
No, you.
Why don't we do this? I'll see if I can get in touch with Andrew and them and see if we can play it right after y'all's break,
Pause it.
possibly.
Oh, yes. Mhm.
Well, we've got the public hearing, it's 2 public hearings at 7, so we may have to go through those first.
Hmm.
We can get back down here soon enough.
It is worth to hear the music and the
It
voices.
is.
You gotta see
Alright.
it in its whole. Don't,
Yeah,
no
you
point
do.
even looking at it
Okay.
without the whole.
All right,
Okay.
all right.
It's unfortunate.
But it's exceptional.
I just checked with Andrew and them
It's
beforehand to make sure that it worked, and they said it worked earlier. so.
All right.
You know, certainly thanking them for their efforts.
Yes.
Lee was certainly kept me apprised, and I appreciate, recognize these were all privately funded dollars that then will have an exponential effect on the county's economy.
And thank you for all your work doing this. I mean, it's I mean, we understand that it'll be a benefit to the county as well as all the businesses here. Thank you.
Thank you.
And the embed code will be on the website?
Yes, as soon as, it's not embedded right now.
Right, but-
Because we don't have the capability, but there is a link to it that takes you to the Vimeo so that you can.
There
so that
was
you
a
can watch
problem
it.
with that link earlier today.
It's not, it's a problem with the county's computers. The capability mode needs to be switched over with the internet, and then it all plays on all of them.
Okay.
Let's go into recess. Would you read the?
All right. Whereas the Board of Supervisors of Orange County desires to discuss in closed meeting the following: discussion and consideration of salaries of specific public employees, discussion and consideration of the acquisition of real property for public purpose or the disposition of publicly held real property where discussion in an open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the public body, and consultation with legal counsel employed or retained by a public body regarding specific legal matters requiring the provision of legal advice by such counsel. And whereas pursuant to sections 2.2, 3711A1, A3, and A7 of the Code of Virginia, such discussions may occur in closed meeting. Now therefore be resolved that the Orange County Board of Supervisors hereby authorize discussion of aforesaid matters in closed meeting.
Get a motion?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We're into closed session.
Yes.
All right, go ahead.
All right. To the best of your knowledge, were the only matters discussed in the closed meeting public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements, and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion by which the closed meeting was convened were heard, discussed, or considered in the closed meeting. Roll call.
Mr. White?
Aye.
Mr. Crozier?
Aye.
Mr. Frame?
Aye.
Mr. Goodwin?
Aye.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
All right, next item on the agenda is the public hearing on the proposed amendment to the Orange County taxation ordinance.
Mr. Chairman, this is really just a housekeeping matter. State code was changed this past year for, this is for tax abatement on elderly folks and disabled folks. And the state code was changed so that a property that's owned by a trust is also qualified, so this adds that trust language. And in doing that, I also cleaned up I added some paragraphs on proving that you are in fact disabled, and I just pulled those straight out of state code. And then we had a penalty provision which wasn't authorized by state code, so I removed that. So it's strictly just to bring our ordinance into compliance with the current state code.
Does anybody have any questions for Tom? Okay. Open the public hearing then. Do you have anybody signed up to speak on this?
No, sir, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, we'll close the public hearing. Any discussion? Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Motion by Mr. Goodwin, seconded by Mr. Johnson. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Okay, the next item is the rezoning 14-02.
Mr. Chairman, our second public hearing this evening is for REZ 14-02. It was an application by Kenny Dotson on behalf of J.R. Lex out of Lexington, South Carolina. It's to rezone approximately 3.2 acres of land between Narrow Gauge Road and Constitution Highway in Unionville. The applicant is proposing to subdivide that property pending approval of the application and to construct a 9,100 square foot Dollar General retail store on the property. The Planning Commission originally heard this way back in September. At that time, they voted by 3-1 to recommend denial of the application. That brings us to this evening. And looking at the application, the comprehensive plan, 2013 comprehensive plan, given that this property is in the village land use designation, it is supported by the comprehensive plan. Staff did note a number of impacts that this application would have on its surrounding properties and transportation, the network around there. There were a couple iterations of proffers that were submitted. Your most recent one was submitted about 4 hours ago via email. You should have a hard copy of that in front of you. Hopefully you've had a time to review those. That being said, any questions?
Anybody have questions for Josh?
Do you, the planning commission had several questions that they raised. Have you had a chance to, in light of the new proffers, look back to see to what extent the proffers now address the issues raised by the planning commission? They had, I don't have it in front of me yet, several specific questions.
One of the big contentions and concerns of the Planning Commission was transportation related, and that had to do with the willingness of the applicant to proffer turn lanes in and out of the site. Your most recent copy of the proffers do include a proffer. It's number 4, which would be on the front side, to construct a left-hand turn lane, which would be a northbound turn lane on 20 into the site. So given that proffer, I feel like that's satisfied that Planning Commission concern.
There was also a question about narrow gauge road, as I recall, too, right?
Yeah, there was a couple of the members expressed concern about truck traffic accessing the site from narrow gauge road. And the applicant has also had a proffer in there to restrict all access to the site from narrow gauge road. That would be proffer number 3.
Which says there will be no access.
Correct.
Are there others that we should take note of at this point?
On the first page, that was all that was changed from the other versions of the proffers. I believe number 5 was changed somewhat to give more buffering and fencing to surrounding properties. Proffer number 7 was probably the biggest one. That involves the donation of the remainder piece post subdivision. And then number 8, it was also, because C2 is probably our most permissive zoning district, there was concerns that a number of things that probably would be too impactful to surrounding properties could be permitted. So the applicant added proffer number 8, which restricts it to 10,000 square feet of retail store.
About the question of lighting in number 6, was that a planning commission issue? Do you recall?
I believe one member may have raised it. A couple of the speakers at the public hearing raised that as a concern. I believe they live adjacent to or nearby.
Any more questions for Josh? Okay. We hear from the applicant.
I'm going to try to juggle all this. I'm not used to using this computer, this laptop. My name is Ken Dotson. I reside at 33225 Constitution Highway, Locust Grove, Virginia. Been a resident of Orange County about 35 years. We've gotten involved with Dollar General about almost 2 years ago, building the Dollar General there in Locust Grove. We found in discussions with them last year that they were looking at a site in Unionville. It asked for our help because we were already involved in the community. So we started reaching out, looking at different parcels there in Unionville. Again, I'm just the agent acting on behalf of the applicant for Dollar General. But anyways, they started looking at sites and realized that there was a special use permit for the church property. The church hadn't done anything with the property, made contact with the church. Church was interested in selling the property, so entered into a contract with the church to purchase the property. One reason they were looking there was good visibility straight away. When you get right at 522 and 20, there's a lot of things going on, so there's a lot of more traffic things that need to be mitigated there than there on 20. When they look at traffic patterns, the traffic count's a little bit higher east of 522 towards Fredericksburg side versus going towards the orange side. Traffic's less going towards Culpeper on 522 as it is going to Lake Anna. So 20, the location on 20 seemed to make sense. So we entered into a rezoning application with the county, and so that's where we're here today. I went to a lot of the neighbors. I went to every neighbor's house. I didn't talk to every neighbor because some of them weren't home. There was a lot of at that time back in I guess about August. There was a lot of concern with the access to narrow gauge road. The proposal, the concept plan that we came up with, again, it was suggested that we access narrow gauge road from the site, and one reason was through VDOT and others that it would help disperse the traffic. It would give it 2 access points. If somebody wanted to come in and shop at Dollar General, they could go to narrow gauge road. They could go to the convenience site, dump their trash because it's directly across the street. The neighbors that live on narrow gauge road wouldn't have to get on 20 to actually go to Dollar General. They could just use narrow gauge road as a service road. I think talking to the neighbors, that was really what got a lot of people in an uproar, was the access to narrow gauge road, because again, it's been pretty much a predominantly private road for those folks there. And again, the other thing was the aesthetics of the building and how it would impact the neighboring houses. So what we tried to do was to mitigate that. We came up with the proffers that we did. What I'd like to do is this. Let's see. How do I get the screen to actually? Bear with me. I'm trying to use this thing here. We had just last August. Again, here's the. I put my glasses on too here. The property that we're talking about. Let's see. Can you see when I'm marking it at all? Is right where it says Route 20. That right there's the pavilion. I'm not sure if my marker's coming up on your screen or not. But that's where that pavilion is. That's part of the church property. It's 3.2 acres, and to the right there's a field there, and that's where the proposed Dollar General is looking to go. And you can see narrow gauge road where it comes out on both sides. We had just built a Dollar General in Louisa County on Route 208, right within 1,000 feet of the new food line. It's there on 208 in Louisa County. And here's a picture of that Dollar General as you approach it off of 208. You can see it's got downward lighting on the post. It's got a low monument sign that says Dollar General. As you approach the building, you can see that it's you really can't tell what it is right now, but it's hardy plank siding. As you get closer, the definition comes up. Again, here's another picture of the monument sign. You can see there's landscaping there beside the monument sign. Again, here's as you're getting a little bit closer. And again, this Dollar General was located on 208 in a 55-mile-an-hour speed zone. And it doesn't have a left-hand or right-hand turn lane. It has a slight taper into the site. There's another picture. It's hard to tell, I guess, by the picture. My clarity's not good on this computer, but it's brick at the bottom. It's 3 foot of brick, and it's hardy plank throughout the top. So this gives you an idea what this end of the building. This is the 70-foot side. They pretty much build these buildings 70 by 130, so it's out situated. The one we're proposing is on the 130-foot side, which it would be really The entrance would be like looking at the side of this building. Again, that's hardy plank on this building on the side, their parking field on the left-hand side. There is a residence to the left of this house, to the Dollar General. There's a 6-foot privacy fence that's going along it. This is at the back of the building looking towards the front of the store. You can see there's a single personnel door. That's really an emergency exit for the people that are in the retail part of the store. There's another double door that's kind of behind that tree. That's actually the entrance to the deliveries. So it's not a big overhead door or anything like that. It's just a double door to bring in the stock when they do have deliveries. This is the other side of the building. This is really what it would look like on the back of narrow gauge road, because this is 130 foot long. It has the grass area. When we looked to build the store in Unionville, it would have really about 50 foot of grass between there and the edge of pavement. So that's really what you would see. And again, what we're proposing is putting Leland cypress along the back of the building. In our new proffers, what we've proffered is to put shutters proportionally along the back of the building to make it have the appearance that there's windows in the back of the building also. And this picture here was taken of a Dollar General. Again, it's not completed because you don't see the Dollar General sign above the storefront, but it's 3 foot of brick on the bottom. It's hardy plank on the top, and it actually has the the shutters. And what it is, it's really, you're putting the shutters in place of the windows to give it the appearance that the shutters have been shut, just like in a colonial type building. This is the new store that's being proposed. Again, looking at even to do this color scheme. Again, at the top, the bottom, the 3 foot is brick. The top is hardy plank. Again, it's got a bump out at the top to give it some nice definition. What we're proposing is 4 sets of shutters on the front of this building to break up, 2 sets on one side, 2 on the other to break up the front appearance. The next rear elevation, that's where you'd have your 5 sets of shutters in between where your downspout openings are. What we've done here, you don't see the roof at all from anywhere on the building because we've got a facade, a parapet wall going all the way around that actually conceals the roof. The new Dollar General stores that are being built now, the HVAC units used to be on the ground. The ductwork used to run up the walls and go into the buildings. Now they're actually located on top of the building, so you don't see anything. And with this parapet wall going around it, it actually conceals the HVAC units on top of the roof. This would be the left side elevation coming from 522 towards the store. This is what you would see. That single door there is really just an emergency exit. It's not used unless a fire or something happened and had to evacuate the building. This is the right side coming from Lafayette Boulevard. That double door is the delivery door. What we're proposing to do is all 3 of these elevations would be hardy plank, but we paint the bottom 3 feet to match the brick all the way around so that you still give that appearance of that brick look from a distance when you get up to it. So that's what we're looking to do with that. I'd like to read you the proffers that we've offered. The applicant is applying to rezone 3.2 plus or minus acres to commercial C2. The applicant voluntary proffers the following in the event that the site is rezoned by the Board of Supervisors of Orange County to commercial C2, and these proffers are approved by Orange County. If the property is rezoned and then developed, and the development of the property shall be in conformance with all applicable county codes and government regulations. Structural and architectural. The developer plans to build a building that will conform to the surrounding buildings. In order to do that, the height of the building will not exceed 25 feet. The exterior will be hardy plank siding of neutral colors installed on all 4 sides of the building. Accent colors will be chosen to match the hardy plank siding. Doors and windows will be of metal, vinyl, and glass. Building will have concealed metal roof with a parapet wall. Dumpster pad will be screened from Constitution Highway with fencing. The front of the building will have 3 feet of brick veneer at the bottom. The brick will run the entire length of the front of the building. See attached rezoning exhibit in the drawing of exterior elevations dated 9/15/2014. Exterior signage. A monument sign will be installed at the road near the commercial entrance along Constitution Highway. The overall height of the sign will be 8 feet. See rezoning exhibit K. The sign will be permitted and designed in accordance with the Orange County zoning ordinances. A wall sign will be permitted and attached to the building on the side facing Constitution Highway in accordance with the zoning ordinance. Access. The access to the store will be located on Route 20. There will be no access to Lot A from narrow gauge road. A left-hand turn lane will be constructed by the applicant on Route 20 prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy for the property. Screening and buffering. A 6-foot wooden fence will be installed and maintained along the back of the property line from the right corner of the building to the back right corner of the property. The 6-foot wooden privacy fence will all be also installed and maintained along the right side of the property line. So what we're proposing, if I can get back to that picture, is that from the right side of the corner of the building, and again, you can see from the back of the building to narrow gauge road, it's approximately about 50 feet. All that would be grass. From the corner of the building, the security fence would tie right to the corner. Nobody could actually get between the building and the fence to get around back. So that security fence would go all the way to the property line and turn and come all the way back up Route 20. And then the dumpsters are located on a load right beside the loading area. And again, they would be fenced in themselves, the dumpsters. And as you come in, this pretty much on the right side would be stormwater management and grass. This is asphalt. It's asphalt there in front of the building. And on the left side, it would be all grass also on the left there, about 50 foot. A row of Leland cypress trees will be planted behind the building along the back side of the property line at a spacing to help screen the building when the trees have matured. All exterior lighting will be turned off by 11 o'clock p.m. except for any lighting needed for security purposes only. Lot B, which is the residual parcel, will not be developed for any commercial purposes or use. The County of Orange shall be given the option to be exercised at its sole discretion to have Lot B deeded to the county to be used as a public park. The county must exercise the option no later than December 31st, 2020, or the option will expire. Until such time as the option is exercised, the property may continue to be utilized in the same manner it is currently used. The parties will execute a written instrument whereby the county can record its option in the Orange County Circuit Court. In other words, what we would like to see is this pavilion and park area to be used as a park and for the community and the citizens to have the benefit of it. The building itself will not exceed 10,000 square feet. Right now it's at 9,100 square feet. We just allowed 900 square feet for any additional space if they needed it, and will be used as a general merchandise retail store. 4 sets of shutters will be added proportionally to the front of the building, and 5 sets of shutters will be added proportionally to the back of the building to give the appearance of window locations. The financial benefit to the county for this store, the projected annual sales are $1.4 million. They do non-prescription sales, which are non-taxed, about $200,000. So the net taxable sales is about $1,200,000. At a 5.3% tax rate, the state generates about $63,600 in sales tax revenue. $47,700 that goes to the state. $15,900 of that stays in the county. On a merchant's capital tax of roughly $200,000, the county would generate about $800 in tax revenue. The real estate tax at 84 cents per hundred would be at assessment of $1.2 million is what this property would be after the store is built, would be about $10,080. So the total tax collected for the county would be $26,780. Total revenue to the state and the county is $74,480, which a lot of that comes back in for the fire departments, for the rescue squad, for the sheriff's department, for the schools. So we see a lot of that benefit coming back. Dollar General, some people look that it's a Dollar General, it's a dollar store, but Dollar General truly is the old general store that we used to have in a lot of communities. If you go in there and look at the products, they've got linens and bedwear and curtains and medicines and food and staples and cleaning supplies. A lot of people can benefit from the discounts that Dollar General offers. The other thing, by locating a Dollar General in Unionville, which is 10 miles from Locust Grove and 10 miles from Orange, you actually are creating some community shopping in Unionville, and you actually are mitigating the traffic that's using the Route 20 corridor. So you're keeping people close to home. And we've had this discussion. There's a lot of people that go to Culpeper from Unionville. But when they go to Culpeper, they might wait 2 or 3 days to go to Culpeper. But if they have a Dollar General in Unionville, they may go to Dollar General once every day just to get their necessities. So it may save them even that 20-mile trip to Culpeper. But we think it's a good thing. We think it's a benefit to the county. It'll help balance the tax base, and we hope it we look favorably on it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Do you have any questions for the applicant? None? Okay, we'll open the public hearing. How many people have we signed up?
We currently have 3 speakers, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. We call the first speaker, please.
First speaker is Autumn Fitch, 10001 Dogwood Lane.
Okay, would you please limit your remarks to about 5 minutes?
I'll try. I've been asked to speak for a lot of the neighbors.
Okay.
My name's Autumn Fitch. I'm the Town of Culpeper GIS coordinator. And in searching for a home for 2 years, I found this great little spot right off Narrow Gauge Road, and now find out they're going to put a big box store right in front of our houses. So obviously I'm upset about that and looked into it. And some of the things, I mean, I have to say Mr. Dodson has tried to address a lot of the concerns, and we appreciate it. But there's a bigger issue here. I feel like some things that aren't being pointed out, some of the minutes that were simplified after the Planning Commission meeting when all of us showed up and a lot of people spoke our hearts out, and some of those remarks from, you know, Chairman Brooks and Ms. Hale are not listed in any of the paperwork you have. And I want to highlight some of those things because I felt like that really hit home with me. Some of the things Ms. Hale said about, you know, the fact that this really doesn't fit with this village concept for the comp plan. That is supposed to be, and this is a quote from, you know, the comp plan, the guidelines, retain the small village and community living identity. I don't think Dollar General, you know, a sided store like that is going to fit into that. To quote, promote development contiguous with existing development uses. Contiguous means touching boundaries. Both properties on either side of this rezoning application are homes that are zoned agricultural, as are all the properties on the other side of Narrow Gauge Road. So I feel like she said it best, you know, when she said this really doesn't fit in with that whole village concept. You know, not to mention that the benefit isn't there for the community. We already have Dollar Generals less than 10 miles away. That's the closest medium-sized box store chain retail that we have. It's the exact same store. You know, I don't see a big benefit, you know, to having this right in front of our faces in this little cute little neighborhood that's going to destroy, you know, right next to a school district. She pointed out the fact that she sought out and tried to find one person in support of this project and couldn't find one. That essentially, you know, with being as close to Unionville Elementary that it is, it's essentially a school district. We all treat it like that. You're talking about major traffic issues, and there are other issues with that, you know, things like the property not being wide enough, you know, to even acquire the amount of space for the turning lanes. This stuff was in emails back and forth from John Orr at VDOT to, you know, Greg Zotti before he left. You know, I'm not sure if you've read all of that. You know, there were issues like that where it's out of the applicant's control to even acquire the land, you know, needed to make these turning lanes. There were other issues that, you know, Chairman Brooks brought up just about the fact that this particular project not having the benefit to the community, you know, for what is being offered. The proffers that are being offered are not great enough. Even the tax amount that he's talking about bringing in, he's not taking into account the negative tax value of all of our properties that surround it, which are worth over $1 million when you consider that. You know, that there's 14 or 15 homes off of Narrow Gauge Road right there, you know, between $100,000 and $200,000+ right there. You know, and if it comes to something where we have to, you know, apply for possibly a declaration of the effect of this rezoning and see if there's going to be 15 to 20% depreciation in our properties. You know, there's other legal aspects we'd have to look at because I just don't see the benefit. And there's other people who are going to speak about other issues that haven't been brought up here, like the fact that the land doesn't perk. You know, there's things, you know, that are going on with narrow gauge road having drainage issues on either side, is that being addressed? Are they gonna fill that in? How's that gonna affect us down the street from it? There's just too many things being brought up that this property, as Chairman Brooks ended when they denied the rezoning request at the Planning Commission, he said, as much as he appreciates Mr. Dodson and the economic development he does for Orange County, this particular project in this location, he cannot support. The neighborhood doesn't support it. If you go forward and support it, it's essentially like a spot zoning issue. As far as I'm concerned, you're favoring one high favored development person over the entire community. We've all signed a petition that's been included in here against this. I just really hope that you'll take all that into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Thomas Rodriguez, 123 Twyman Street.
My name is Reverend Thomas Rodriguez. I'm the pastor of the Orange Church of the Nazarene. I reside at 123 Twyman Street, and the church resides at 159 West Nelson Street here in Orange. Back in August of 2014, when the first public hearing was held before the Planning Commission, there were a lot of opinions and emotions that came bubbling to the surface. Some very genuine concerns were raised at the public hearing about the street access, the view, the congestion on narrow gauge road, just to mention a few. By our second meeting, all of the safety issues raised were addressed in the proffers that Mr. Dodson offered at the Commission's request. The only item that could not be resolved was the turning lane addition asked by the county. And I want to thank the Board of Supervisors for their willingness to hear all the sides and to make a truly informed decision about what's going on there. When the property at the church owns was given, the Hudsons truly believed in the vision that Pastor Billy had cast to build a church there in Unionville. Their gift was accepted and a verbal agreement not to sell the property while Billy was pastor was made. The Hudsons received a donation slip for their contribution to the church. When the vision did not come to pass, the Hudson family left the church. Pastor Billy left the Orange Church in October 2010, and I became the pastor in May of 2011. For more than 3 years had gone since the verbal agreement with Pastor Billy was made, and under Virginia law, we were no longer under any obligation not to sell the property. For the past 6 years, the church has paid taxes on the property, made improvements of over $50,000 to the land in the form of the pavilion, storage, the playground, the parking lot, electrical service, and drainage. At no time in my tenure as pastor has Mr. Hudson or his family ever formally asked me or the church board to purchase or to give back the property. The sale and development of this property falls in line with what you proposed as the village concept, with commercial mixed use and residential entities side by side. The proffers offered by the developer meet all the concerns the commission had. The county will benefit from this deal. The church and the community that we serve will benefit from this deal. Whether or not the deal goes through, as Mr. Brooks had mentioned, something would be built there. If it wasn't that, then the church's plan for a 5,000 square foot building, metal building with a steeple, a lighted parking lot, and restricted access only to narrow gauge road, which this body said that was our only option, was to access narrow gauge road. If that had come to fruition, that building would have been busy 5 days a week. There would have been quite a bit of traffic coming and going from there if the church had taken off there as it was envisioned. But the Visions Church has changed, and we reach Orange County from our current location. 90% of our congregation resides in Orange County, with 10% in Madison and Culpeper and King George counties. We want to refurbish our current facility and offer more services to our community, daycare and tutoring, expand our children and youth programming, just to mention a few. My hope and prayer is that you, elected officials of Orange County, will do what is best for the county as a whole. I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And the last speaker is Robert Souse, 24299 Narrow Gauge Road.
Robert Sousey.
Sorry about that.
I have a few items I'd like to make you aware of, and I don't know if they've ever been considered before, but we should. Let me give you a little background here. An earthquake in late August 2011 took the Lake Anna nuclear power plant offline. The epicenter was at Louisa, Virginia. Our house on Narrow Gauge Road didn't just tremble, it shook sharply. Things inside rattled around, and I believe the quake cracked our asphalt parking pad. I can't be confident about the same time. That's right. Anyway, the crack is still there. The soil at the building site does not perk. Everybody seems to agree about that, and will not support a septic system. A well drilled there would be subject to the same high levels of radon gas, and I tested my own well and my air inside the house, not just the well water. And they were just barely under the maximum allowable by the health department. Let's see, same high levels of radon gas and probably radioactive uranium as found in other soil along the fault line. The power company requires access to the power poles and also the supporting guy wires, and that will shorten the usable size of the whatever building goes in there. Why deliberately build on a fault line? That's my question. And also the location will only exacerbate an already overburdened traffic system. Entry and exit from the county trash boxes, no commercial dumping is allowed there, by the way. And cars stacked up in the dedicated turn lanes at the Route 20 and 522 traffic light limit north-south and east-west traffic flow. And for your consideration, I hope. And I don't. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any more speakers?
No, sir, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. We'll close the public hearing. Any comments or questions from the board?
Josh, the borders of the village area, we've got this in our packet. Do you have any, how much larger is it than that, or is that actually, do you know?
You can more or less see it on the approved map over there. Rhodesville, Unionville kind of morphs into one village area. It's the largest one in the comp plan.
Okay.
The purple.
Yeah, sorry, blue there at the intersection. If I had to guess, it's probably a few thousand acres, if I had to guess.
Okay, yeah, that's good.
Another question for you, Josh. Several people raised questions about stormwater and the site perking and these types of things. I mean, those are obviously issues that if this zoning would happen to go forward, at the next phase, when you start approving a site plan and the Culpeper Soil and Water folks and as well as VDOT and others, I mean, I think it would be helpful if from a process standpoint, that we, the board, and those people that are interested are here, get some reassurance as to our process. I'm not asking you to make any commitments, but there's a process that deals with a lot of these things that frankly puts a substantial burden on the developer with respect to dealing with them. So if you have any comments about
what has to be gone through, yes.
Yeah, what that process looks like and the safeguards that are built into that process as it enters not tonight's phase, which is just rezoning, but any subsequent phases to actually building. Didn't mean to put you on the spot, but I think that's an important discussion.
I'm fully prepared to answer that, actually. Someone brought it up prior to this. In terms of well and septic, obviously some sort of a septic system has to be approved under state law. There's no getting around that. Some time ago, the then property owner actually got a perk test on the property and found out it would not perk. So likely whatever is built there will have to have what's called an engineered system. Those typically come in two more prevalent forms. One is basically big blue collection boxes. They're filled with microbes and enzymes, and they break down the waste, and the property owner has to have someone come and pump it. There's another system where you treat the effluent, the dirty water, to the point where it's clean enough that they can actually discharge it into a storm drain or a ditch. Those are just two options. There's others that I'm not fully aware of.
So both of those options have to be approved by DEQ?
They have to be engineered and approved by VDH.
VH.
And maybe
VDH.
DHU as well,
Okay.
depending on the system. Now, in terms of water, they have to make sure that the water passes, again, state law. If it is contaminated in any way, they won't get a CO from the building department. If it is contaminated, sometimes there's mitigation measures they can install. But again, if it's not safe, they won't get a CO and it won't open. So those are the
I
two.
would expect that a competent builder would answer that question before he's got his building built.
I would hope so.
Also, one speaker's raised I think a good question about what amounts to stormwater management, the ES&H issues. I know Culpeper Soil and Water made a comment on the application. Has there been any, what's your view of that at this point as to issues or the like?
They'll have to mitigate stormwater regardless. They're under the new regs, which were passed, became fully effective in July of last year. Last year, it's weird to say. 2014. So basically, part of how those regs work is they treat the site as it is now. There's nothing on it. It's fully 100% impervious. And whatever's built on that site, the point of mitigation has to basically bring that property back to 100% impervious. So basically treat it as there's no impervious on it at all. So my point in saying that, though, is that whatever runoff is caused by the development will have to be mitigated somehow.
My understanding is that basically there can be no runoff.
Essentially, yeah. Yeah, you're correct.
The stormwater cannot leave the property.
Has to be retained on site.
Until it's treated and then released naturally into a ditch, or I don't think there's a stream nearby, but
Has to be reduced to the Virginia Stormwater BMP clearinghouse standards and specification number 2 and 4, whatever those are, is what it has to be brought back down to.
Quantity and quality, LID.
Traffic. I know there's been, I can tell from reading all the materials, there's been lots of discussions about traffic patterns, turn lanes, no turn lanes, using narrow gauge. My sense is from some discussions I had with VDOT that and according to their what are called warrant calculations, that the real issue was the left turn lane, and while VDOT doesn't require it, I think been lots of discussions about going forward if there's any increase in traffic as a result of natural growth or this development or any other, that in order to mitigate the potential for safety issues and the like, that left turn lane would be appropriate to consider. The question is, does that solve the traffic issues as best you know from VDOT's work and your own review of this, or what does that do for us?
it's certainly better than nothing, I'll say that. In order to, without the turn lane, what you end up having is people taking left-hand turns into the site, people that are otherwise going to Locust Grove. Then you start getting a stacking effect backing up into 522. And that's what the left-hand turn lane avoids and mitigates. The calculations and the spreadsheets that VDOT uses to assess those warrant calculations, they really depend on how you weight your average vehicle trips per day going either direction. And they made it very clear that in terms of needing a left-hand turn lane, they were they're literally just on the line. But they also stress that those calculations are purely numbers, and they don't take into effect proximity to, important intersections, access roads like narrow gauge road that have, dual entrances onto the state route, a high number of residential properties, things like that. So when you take all that into effect and the warrant calculations, the turn lanes are required. Not required, but they're needed.
Well, I've had a number of conversations with VDOT over the past few months about things like left turn lanes for Route 522, and I think that what's really needed there, and I intend to pursue this, and I've already talked to them about it once, is that intersection needs to be, and the area, frankly, needs to be redesigned and rethought, because I've watched it during busy times such as school hours or weekends with Lake Anna traffic and the like, and there's a lot of work that needs to be done there. Potentially, this left turn lane could be part of that solution. It appears from those conversations. And so, in your conversations with VDOT, if you would encourage them as well to view the broader context here, I think it's one of the critical intersections of the county right now, particularly. And it seems this would contribute to that solution in part.
Yeah, I will say, VDOT's made a point to say when applications like this, where the applicant, the property owner, installs turn lanes, basically increasing the pavement width on the state route, they look favorably upon that, because whenever down the road, 50 years, however, when they have to widen that road, that pavement's already there. They don't go and rip that up. They use that sub base, they add to it. So essentially, by putting the turn lane in, it's helping the county out transportation wise for eventually for that area, for whatever improvements will be required in the future.
Somebody had asked the question, where does the property come from for that? Actually building that turn lane? Is it within the existing right-of-way that VDOT has there? It's coming off the edge of this property, or?
It should be all within the right-of-way. 20 right there is at least 110 feet wide, and 20 is more skewed to the north side of that property. But the last meeting I had with VDOT, they said it should have enough right-of-way to accommodate it.
Okay.
So it should be all within VDOT's right-of-way.
And it appears VDOT would support it since they requested it in a manner of speaking.
A couple, I guess, comments and concerns. Some of the concern that it has existed is because it's a Dollar General. And I believe a young lady in the hall, I spoke with her after the planning commission, and she was one of a couple of people I talked to that said, why couldn't it be a Walgreens or a CVS or a Starbucks? And that is not what, in my view, what we don't determine a brand of a business going in. We determine whether it's suitable for business or not. One of the other things, and happened to bring up the radon, sir, we just had a presentation before our break this evening that even though you may have high level of radon in your well or your home, it's very possible and likely that your neighbor does not. They said, I did not know, but they said that radon doesn't work that way. It's a fickle type of a gas. The other major concern I have is we're looking at a parcel of land on Little Island and looking at the use, whether it fits in or doesn't fit in. And I know that another parcel of land on that island was sold. And it was sold to a gentleman that is a builder and developer. That concerns me that there's this opposition when there was an opposition to a church. And This property's now been sold to a gentleman that, he doesn't just buy land to buy it. He plans on developing land that he buys, or selling it for development. These are just some of the things I've looked at and some of the concerns. And, I'm not saying it matters one way or the other. It's just, other things that have not been introduced or entered into this, and I think our focus is to be on whether this is suitable for a commercial building or it's not for a commercial building. That's all I have.
Anybody else have any comments or questions?
I will mention one of the considerations that we have, and I think it's contributed to the designation of the area as a village in the comp plan. We have to look at what else is around there, both in terms of residential, but also commercial and other uses. And many of you live there. I live not very far away, and you know, it's a mixed bag. There's all sorts of things there, from schools to green boxes to homes. And our difficult task is to try to envision the impact that the proposed development would have, given the facts of the setting that's there. You know, that's not science. That's really just a judgment call, and it's not an easy one in a case like this, because I've had some neighbors tell me that they would really like to see it happen. I've had others that were concerned about it, and so I think the neighborhood does have a mixed view of this. I think I even have a mixed view of it, without question. I was concerned about particularly traffic and those kind of things. The experts have convinced me that we're on the right path of mitigating those kind of issues. But it really does come down to the issues of the neighborhood and the impact on the neighborhood, particularly given what already exists in the neighborhood. And that's the judgment that we have to make.
Anything else? Does anyone want to entertain a motion?
For discussion purposes, I'll entertain a motion to approve the rezoning request.
I have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Mr. Goodman. We're still in a discussion phase. Any further discussion?
Well, I think Jim has covered a lot of it. These kinds of decisions are never particularly pleasant, because you've got people who want it and people who don't want it. So we know we're going to leave here tonight making somebody unhappy and somebody else happy. So it's not really you know, it's kind of you have to move beyond that and try to figure out the best decision to make, and you got to weigh a lot of different issues, and among those are the fact that this was whether it was a good idea or a bad idea. This property is in an area that's been labeled a village center. So that's a justification for this type of a building. No project is ever perfect. There's always something that's, you'd say, I wished it was this way or that way, or I wished it was down the road 150 feet or 1,000 feet or whatever. So, you know, this board's got to weigh all of those different things. There were a number of issues brought up at the planning commission. I was here, so I did hear, along with Jim, all the comments. I think the applicant has largely addressed those complaints, those issues. I don't, when I say complaints, I don't mean that in a pejorative way. There's one thing he can't do. He can't turn this into a mom and pop store from 1910. He can't do that. It's a Dollar General store, and that's what it's that's what wants to go in there. So we just kind of have to deal with that. I'm not picking on Dollar General, but obviously they're not the sexiest brand in the world. But on the other hand, there's a lot worse things that could go in there. I mean, I think I don't really understand. They've got one in Orange, got one in Locust Grove. I don't really understand why they want another one Midway, but that's not my problem. I mean, that's Dollar General's lookout as to whether that's a good business plan or not. There's a lot of them out there, so they must be doing pretty well. So I can't really. My judgment really can't be based on that, or my decision can't be based on that. I think I think it's very important that all the traffic was taken off a narrow gauge. I think it's very important that a left-hand turn lane was added. And I think some things have been done to make the store look, at a casual glance, going down Route 20, it will make it look a little bit more like a village and less institutional. At the end of the day, like I said, you can't. We're not going to have, something that was, that would fit on the set of Mayberry or something like that. It's just not going to happen. Time moves on, and so those are just some thoughts that I have. I think, again, like Jim said, at the end of the day, this is not science. This is kind of making the best of it and coming up with an opinion of how you personally feel it fits in or doesn't fit in. It's not easy.
I appreciate the comments of the other board members. I am a little, the fact that there's other steps that this has to go through before the building is built. Obviously, the Department of Health has its impact. Virginia Culpeper Soil and Water Control District, they have their say. So there are other steps that have to meet, that the process has to meet to be able to meet all state and or basically state and local requirements. So I think that that's part of an assurance that some of the things that were mentioned this evening will have to be resolved successfully for this project to go ahead in terms of an actual building. Our decision is with regard to the land use, and that's the point that comes to us here. Is this area, this town center? Is that really, or village center? Is that really? Is this going to complement that? And I think it will. This needs some commercial in there, and this is local serving retail, which is really what these centers are for, more so than even some of the other businesses that might be there that are not necessarily local serving. So I think that the process is appropriate, and the rest of the steps will make sure that most of the concerns are taken care of.
I'd also like to make a comment. Both staff, county staff, and the planning commission, I think, have done a good job at having discussions with the applicant in terms of limiting the use. As you probably know, the request is for a commercial C2 zoning, which permits a lot of things, and the applicant has volunteered to limit the scope of uses under any rezoning, both in terms of the size of the store, but I think more particularly to specifically a general merchandise retail store. That's only one of several dozen possible uses under a C2 zoning. And so one of the things that gives me some comfort, in addition to the process steps that are yet to come, is that this probably goes as far as we have the abilities and authorities to go in terms of limiting the impact and the type of commercial development that could be there. Our authorities do not extend to placing a lot of limits outside what our zoning ordinance calls for. But through the work of staff and the planning commission, I think they've gotten it to the point where the applicant realizes that it's important to limit it and be specific about what they're trying to do and fit it in the neighborhood. And so I think that's an important step in this process, as well as all those to come that you mentioned.
Any further discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Crozier?
Aye.
Mr. Frame?
Aye.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mr. White?
Aye.
Mr. Goodwin?
Motion passes 5-0. Thank everybody for their comments and input. All right. We get back to the regular portion of our agenda. The Tourism Quarterly Report.
We didn't do the public comment or the consent.
Oh, yeah, we missed that. Yeah, let's do a public comment. Do we have any people signed up for public comment?
No, sir, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, all right. Thank you. All right. Consent agenda.
Move we approve.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. All right, now we get the quarterly report.
I think there's also
And a video.
The video.
Is the video ready?
Yeah, I think so. Let's cross our fingers and hope so. It was when I left, so.
May have to turn the speakers up, but that should be it.
It times out after a little bit, so hopefully it'll play. Okay, why is this sound not working this time?
Denied.
That's it. Now this just does not make any sense, now does it? Yeah.
You doing it from
From the website? Let's try this
the
again.
click
and see.
OK.
Maybe we'll do it this time.
I know we had it working.
We had it working before we left. I just
Do,
heard
do
speaker
Maybe
out.
we should try learning to read lips.
That's it.
I promise you, we really did. It was the last thing we went and did for y'all.
It was.
And we played it, and there was volume, and we set the adjustments, and we
That's right. Now that Eddie and Calvin aren't here.
try the volume.
I did.
Well, actually, Mr. Dotson did play with that, didn't he, up there?
Is it all your fault, Kenny?
Move to reconsider that application.
On this side?
Yes, when he was clicking, it was making noise.
Go for it. Try one more time. That's all the way up.
Yeah, that's all the way up. Okay, hold on.
Can you do
Did
that?
you try playing it from yours last time from our
Try
website?
one last time. The speakers just kicked in.
Yes, it did. I just heard it. Hold this, please.
Hold it.
This county in each state.
Huh? I know our website works.
we've got a lot to do yet tonight. Let's, let's move on.
Here we go.
All right.
Last chance.
Last chance. If it doesn't work, then it's just not gonna work.
Reboot for the next board meeting.
Yeah, for some reason, this does not wanna work for me, so,
You have speakers on the computer?
nope.
There's no speakers on the computer.
That's why we have the
Let's-
speaker, the external speakers plugged in.
We'll reboot this for the next board meeting.
Yes,
All
sir,
right.
we will. Do you want me to go ahead and do my quarterly
Do your
report while I'm
quarterly
here?
report.
Well, I'm gonna make it short and sweet because y'all have had it for about a week now, so. Just to go over a few items on here, visitation, as you can see at the visitor center, it's down about 23% this year over last year. We've had this discussion previously, visitation to visitor centers is down. However, our visitation to our website is up 23%. So that kind of balances out with what we've been saying is happening. Consequently, 45% of the increase in our visitation to our website is from mobile devices. And so we have a plan in place right now. Brian and I are looking through the budget to try to find funding to possibly apply for some grants and stuff for this year to make our website more mobile friendly. Right now we have no responsive design and it's not very mobile friendly. So that's something that we will be looking into this year to try to increase that. Also, we just finished our commemoration of the sesquicentennial of the American Civil War. We had a very successful event in Gordonsville in December, very well received by everyone. We had about 95 attendees there, raised about $390 for Gordonsville Presbyterian Church, which was one of our partners in this event. Gordonsville is actually going to be looking to do this as an annual event now because it was so popular. Just a few more things want to highlight. Right now, what we're focusing on a lot in tourism is our regional partnerships with our surrounding counties, trying to leverage as much dollars and manpower between the localities. So we're working on two different initiatives right now. One is America's Wine Country, Virginia's Piedmont, which is an 11-county collaborative effort. The first event for that will be February 7th. It's going to be a small-scale event in Fauquier at Airlie and Warrenton, kind of a wine business-to-business connection event, and then a public wine tasting. There will be a larger event in the summer that all the localities can participate in, but right now they're just trying to get this off the ground and get some publicity for it in the short term. So that'll be February 7th in Warrenton. The second thing that we're working on is the Tween Rivers Trail, which is an agri-artisan trail with the Rappahannock-Rapidan Regional Commission and the 5 counties involved in that. We received an AFID grant of $33,000 to help fund this last year through RRC, and so we will be launching this probably the end of this month, first part of next month. We have 12 businesses in Orange County right now that have already signed on, and I will be personally reaching out to the other qualifying businesses to see if they want to participate as well. Our volunteer hours at the Visitor Center continue to increase. Last year we had 2,246.25 hours at the Visitor Center. That's about 52 hours per volunteer. We have 3 volunteers that did over 200 hours apiece for our Visitor Center this year. So we continue to use the community as a wonderful resource to help us keep our Visitor Center open and available for visitors. Lastly, I want to point out a few things that we're going to be doing coming up. Actually, tomorrow I'm meeting with Frank Walker and Sharon Ellswick and some other railroad enthusiasts to try to develop a marketing plan for our new rail enthusiast tour that we're going to be putting together. Frank has done all the legwork on it and done all the background investigation and everything on it so far. So now we're going to be sitting down tomorrow talking about the marketing, how to roll it out, what all we should do moving forward with that. We will be producing a brochure in-house in our department and be putting that on our website as something that people can access that way. So also right now, actually this week, we're going to be mailing out invitation letters for businesses in the tourism community to participate in a tourism economic impact study that we're going to be conducting. We were hoping that it would already launch, but with the holidays and some time crunches, we're going to be mailing it out this week. So businesses should be looking forward in their mailboxes next week. And then we'll be reporting back to you all on the results of that as soon as we get those results. Along with that, we're also going to be doing a series of workshops with Virginia Tourism Corporation starting January 28th. We're going to be inviting about 20 to 25 stakeholders to join us in meetings at the airport for something called Drive Tourism, which is the statewide tourism plan. It's a series of 3 workshops that three 2-hour workshops that they walk us through with a little bit of homework that we do in between to get us to a 3-year and 5-year doable plan for tourism. And all of that goes toward an application for a microeconomic development grant for tourism through Virginia Tourism Corporation. So that's it in a nutshell. Y'all have any questions?
Why did you have the S in the middle of America's swine country?
Huh? Why do I have an S in the middle?
It could have been America wine country, it'll read it America swine country.
Oh, yes, that could be. That would be barbecue.
That's how I
exchange.
first read it.
That would be barbecue exchanges type thing, you know, that's not, that'd be up their alley, so.
Okay.
Hey, it's late at night, Mr. Frame. You caught me off guard with that one, I gotta say.
Working line go well.
That's exactly right. And I apologize for the problems. We had it playing all day. In fact, David Lamb came by my office just before I came here and saw it on my computer and watched it this afternoon and everything. So we'll have it up for you at the next one.
Okay, thanks, Lynn.
Thank you.
Next item, E911 Center Semi-Annual Report. Nikki, how you doing?
You don't need any sound, do you?
No, thankfully not. And I actually, in the break, I actually was the one who got the speakers and actually played it myself and did hear it. So we apologize for that. So how frustrating that it can be. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, good evening. We're here to present the biannual 911 report for calendar year 2014. Just to go over it again, as you can see from the list, we've been busy in the 911 center, but that's, I'm sure you're used to that by now with us. Our total call volume this year was 58,426. Again, we're showing a 1.6% increase from calendar year 2013. This is consistent with the past trends that we always seem to go up about between 1 and 2%. And then normally if you look at a 3 to 5 year trend, you're looking at a 3% increase. So again, historically now we're capturing this data. We have been consistently now for the last 5 or 6 years. So we're actually able to see this and predict these trend lines. Again, 70% of our 911 calls receive via a wireless device. So we're still hanging, about 3/4 of our 911 calls always come in through cell phones. Our call ring times are still on target, so that's a good thing. So I know that my staff are consistently answering 911 and getting calls dispatched as soon as possible. We have actually processed 17,553 calls for service this year. Again, it's a 1.2% increase over last year, and again, it falls within that trend line of a 3% increase in the last 3 years. As Chief Harkness, if he was to come up here too, you would see that reflect in the number of calls for fire and EMS, and the same with Sheriff Amos. They could probably tell you also that their calls have increased too. So again, it starts with the 911 center. We're actually seeing this.
Do you know if Mark has a similar set of statistics like you have here?
I believe he does, but I could not tell you the numbers or anything like that. Yeah.
Might be interesting to understand what he's doing too.
Sorry. As for our staffing, for FY, we capture our staffing over fiscal years because of how the budget runs. I know this is a calendar year report, but that's why you see it reported as a fiscal year. In FY14, we lost 2 part-time employees. One relocated to Alexandria. She was offered a full-time position with City of Alexandria 911, and she's young and the salary was good, so we wish her the best of luck, and she's working out very well for Alexandria from what I hear. And the other employee wasn't able, as a part-timer, you have to meet a minimum of 12 hours a month, and she was unable to do that. And she was also working, and she also works full-time in Louisa County, so trying to balance a full-time job plus a part-time job was just too much. So we let her go through natural attrition also. In FY15 to date, from July 1st to today, we did terminate 1 full-time employee. That leaves us in FY14, our retention rate for all staff was 88%, and so far this year we're at 93%. So I would say that's within the accepted normal ranges. Again, we are still pushing. consistently staff our 2 CTO positions, which are our training officer positions. We have revamped our training manual. Staff now go through a minimum of 4 months of in-house training, and one of the big goals that we accomplished last year was actually applying for the APCO P33 training certificate, and this was to certify that our training program actually meets industry standards in 911. Our application was reviewed. We had a couple of corrections, very minor, and we're just waiting on that final notice, so fingers crossed. And we will be, hopefully, knock on wood, if we get that certificate, it will be awarded in August at the international conference being held in DC. Our systems, again, we just continue to monitor them. Our CAD is still scheduled for a large upgrade, which is just the normal cost of business. The servers have reached an end of, not an end of life, but they need to be replaced out. Same with the PCs and the computers and things like that. Our radio system, we just accomplished replacing the server for that. That was over 10 years old, and replaced all the PCs for that. Again, end of life, with Windows XP and things like that. We were able to, in the upgrade, actually deploy some touchscreen technology, decreasing the number of mice and keyboards that the dispatcher has to use. So I don't know if you've ever been in there and noticed that we had like 8 mice and 4 keyboards. We've now actually got it down to 1 keyboard and 2 mice operating the whole 911 position. So that's been a big challenge to make that happen, and we had to upgrade systems to be able to use that technology. Our biggest project that we accomplished in the past year was actually installing our new 911 phone system. That was a multi-year project that required grant funding. It required hard work from the finance office to get the financing for it, so we can move forward. So we successfully deployed that in April of 2014, and have so far been really happy with the product. In July, we relaunched Smart 911. It is fully operational and working. And actually within the first week of a 911 call, I think I told you this, we actually got to use Smart 911. So hopefully...
How many people have signed up for that?
I don't know. It's a good question actually to know the answer to. So I will have to look into that and get back with you. The other big project that we have been working on too, in part with Mr. David, and I want to thank him for what he has done, is the regional radio systems project, and actually talking to the surrounding counties, Louisa, Greene, Charlottesville, Albemarle, Fluvanna, and Madison, about the issues they're having with radio projects also. It's almost identical. You go to each county, it's identical to what we've said too. So again, looking at a collaboration on can we fix this radio project regionally. And the next date for us to meet is February 6th. This upcoming year, as you know, I have submitted a grant for the text to 911, so we're just waiting. We should hear back from that on any day now. And from what I'm understanding, there is enough money in the pot to fund all the grants that were submitted. So that should be excited, but until I get the letter, I won't count on that money being there. We're going to be upgrading our CAD also again next year to actually bring it to a completely different platform so that we can prepare for NG 911. So this year is more because of hardware, next year is more because of software. We're still continuing to work on the 911 building relocation project. We're still, as you know, we're talking about engineering this new radio system. Still working with our in-house GIS, and again, just continuing to just educate our dispatchers and keep them current on the most available technology out there for the 911 centers. And with that, are there any questions that I can answer?
I just have one comment. I know in the past, over the years, there's always been a fairly large delay in the county getting the communications centers to dispatch a call for mutual aid request. There's been at least 3 incidents within the last week and a half. It was almost instantaneous. So the upgrades that we've gotten and everything have made a huge difference in getting rid of that time delay between our county and another county and getting the apparatus on the road. So I just wanted to mention that while you were still here.
Thank you.
Quick question or comment, if you will, about the collaboration with Madison, Greene, Louisa, and the like on the radio system. I mean, is it your sense that we're, from a timing standpoint, we're more or less in sync with some of these surrounding, or is there a big discrepancy, or how hard is it gonna be to put?
All of the above, if I can answer that.
Okay.
Albemarle has to do an upgrade, and they've known about this for the last 15 years because of the technology they bought. So for the last 15 years, they've known this upgrade is coming. So they've got some timing issues. Fluvanna's already gone to RFP. The neat thing, though, about today's radio systems is there's, you've heard us call it P25, and that's an open standard system. So it basically means that I'll use this laptop. I can take this Dell laptop, I can hook it up to a HP server, and I can turn around and use a Xerox copier. So even though all the pieces are different, they all work with each other. And that's the same way an open design radio system will. Fluvanna went actually from our initial talk, went back and redid their RFP, making that a stipulation that it has to be an open system. So they can drop a radio system in today, and it's big enough and technology works well enough that they could house the brains, and Orange County can just hop on that system. It does not care where the brains live anymore. Again, so it's kind of how I gave you that off, you put all these pieces together, who cares where the brain is? And that's how an open architect radio system works. So yes, we can do projects at different times. If everybody's at a P25 system, it doesn't matter which vendor we use or when we come aboard.
Is there, what would be the areas of savings by working together?
A lot of infrastructure, mainly your radio towers, drive the cost of a radio system up. So could we look at, we know one tower in Albemarle, we know one tower in Green has bleed into Orange. So could we look at piggybacking off of those towers as opposed to Orange County building 2 more towers at easily $1 million today at today's standards as opposed to $1.5 million, 5 years from now. Same with Fluvanna receives 50% of their coverage from the current Albemarle system without having to put one radio tower in sight. So could they piggyback on Albemarle system, share that radio signal, and the brains now live in Albemarle, but the Fluvanna has their own radio system over here. It's very similar to how the Fauquier Rappahannock Culpeper project works. Rappahannock doesn't have a single 800 radio system tower. They piggyback off the Culpeper Fauquier system. The brains live in Fauquier, but everybody works and everybody talks and everybody has their own radio system. Same in Warren County, it's completely covered by Fauquier's radio system.
Okay.
One other thing, you've all heard me, certainly with Nikki, kind of coordinating the working group of the technical folks and with all the other managers involved. And I think there's an excitement because this is really tangible things that we can bring some cost efficiencies and scale. And given this open architecture, it really provides for a level of redundancy that this county or any of these counties have ever had in the past. As she says, wheeling these brains around and things, if God forbid something happens at North Anna or another earthquake, our ability to, at literally the speed of light, move our communications system around this region can be done, and we can make sure the first responders stay in contact and things. So I think there's going to be that we can achieve. And the other thing is, as I understand it, I think Louisa and Orange, of all the communities, are probably at the same step in this process, have the same consultant. And so we will absolutely, I'm very confident, achieve some cost savings by just procurement and design, because we'll be able to do this in step with Louisa. The other part of it is, let's get on the other side of operations and maintenance. We can now scale up O&M contracts for maintaining these systems from a base of a number of localities rather than individually.
We share long borders with both Culpeper and Spotsylvania, and I don't see them on the list. Are we having any conversations with them at all? I mean, your tower comment reminded me of it.
Culpeper, Fauquier, and Rappahannock are already in system engineering designs. They've already released their RFP and working with a consultant. They, again, because of the system they're on, was scheduled for an upgrade anyway, so they've been planning for the last 15 years. but they're going to a P25 system also. So once those gateways open up, we can absolutely join on. Spotsylvania is also deploying an 800 P25 system. So once Spotsylvania has deployed that, it's something, those gateways are open. Now it's just a matter of, hey, we need some internet connectivity, can we join your systems? As opposed to, today we can't do that at all.
And remember, one of the other advantages of working in this collaborative way is dealing with this broadband issue of last mile. Don't want to lose sight of that, our ability to deal with voice and mobile data for first responders, I think will create an opportunity for us to bring, to really take a run at last mile broadband as an economic development aspect to this.
Well, the counties listed tend to be west and south, and I was concerned with north and east as well, which is basically Spotsy and Culpeper.
Correct, yeah. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Thanks, Nikki.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Next is the Animal Shelter Semi-Annual Report. Jenny Strong.
Good afternoon.
Hi, Jenny.
Hi. Really don't have much to report because I've only been on the job for 4 months. However, in June we did have a farewell party for Beth. A lot of volunteers showed up. She did a lot for us and really built us up. End of August is when I was hired. Transition's going smoothly, thanks to the wonderful volunteers that we have to support the shelter. In December, I was honored to go to our first fundraiser that was given at the inn at Willow Grove. They did a last minute, they're having one of their filmings, and they decided last minute to help the shelter out, which they do a lot for us. We raised $5,700 through that. $5,000 was by an anonymous donor. Also, I forgot to say, back in July, we installed a generator. That's up and going. We've actually had to use it one day. The power went to the sheriff's office and to the shelter. Generator kicked in. We do have probably thousands of dollars worth of heart rhythm tests and vaccines in the refrigerator that if our power goes, we could lose that. So it's really good to have. Christmas was good to us. We had a lot of Santa Clauses, a lot of donations, food, pet toys, stuff like that for the animals, and also money. We had like $4,000 donated for our emergency vet fund. I'm actually personally looking forward to the COOP training coming up. In October, I went down to Virginia Animal Control Association meeting that we have every year. One thing we talked about was start planning and emergency preparedness, what to happen in emergency. And what they found was, for example, in Hurricane Katrina, a lot of people did not evacuate because they couldn't take their pets. So I remember a couple years ago in a big snowstorm, I was an animal control officer working that weekend. And I can remember one elderly lady who would not evacuate because of her dog, and she had no heat. We finally talked her into evacuating. I went and met the National Guard and picked up her dogs and brought them to the shelter. So it's something that we do need to, even though people think the shelter is no big deal, in an emergency it is a big deal because people do not go without their animals, and it puts their lives at risk. One thing that's really exciting for the shelter going on right now is we have had a huge increase in adoptions. We contribute that probably to Facebook and Pet Finder. Gina's been on there, and one of our volunteers, really pushing dogs on Facebook. We have to turn in statistics every year to the state, and at the end of the year we had 30 dogs in house and 34 cats. I've been in animal control for 6 years, and I never remember seeing that little of a number. It's really boosted the morale for our volunteers. When you go to PetSmart and sit there all day and you do not adopt a single dog out, it gets discouraging. They're texting me all day Saturday. I'm getting texts. We adopted another one. And these people are seeing them on Facebook and are going to the PetSmart to see the dogs, or they're coming to the shelter. This past weekend, we adopted like 5 out in one day, and it's really boosted the morale. And it actually saves us money because they're only there a couple days. There have been dogs that people are lining up at the door 2 Saturdays ago, and we had to say the first person in gets a dog. We had 3 people there when we opened. So it's been a great asset. It's just great. The statistics for last year, we took in 732 dogs. We took out 745. So we took out more than we took in. Some of that was left over from last year. Same thing with the cats. We had cats, 724 come in, 761 went out. We do a lot through PetSmart. PetSmart Charities does a lot of adoption events for us. Plus they have cats in 3 stores in Fredericksburg. PetSmart alone, we adopted out 238 cats last year. went out through PetSmart that we would not have found homes for if it wasn't for them. So that was really good. Other than that, keep on going. Any questions?
You said how many, you took in, how many you, adopted out?
With dogs, we took in 732 and sent out 745. That's through adoptions, return to owners, or transfer. We transfer some to rescues up north where they don't have enough. For cats, we took in 724 and we sent out 761.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And one picture that I put on here was, which is really helpful. When I was in animal control, when you had people that were being evicted from their homes or were homeless, they didn't want to give their animals up, scared to be put down. When they find out we're a no-kill shelter, they're more readily to bring them to us and let us rehome them for their benefit. We had a dog that has been there for quite a while that actually got adopted for Christmas. We had put on Facebook, our Christmas wish is for Lucianne to find a home, and she did. And it's doing great. So it's really good to be able to tell people, look, we had this dog here for a while, didn't get killed, so you know you can feel comfortable leaving your pet here. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next, county attorney's report.
Mr. Chairman, the first item is a proposed ordinance, comes in consultation with the Commissioner of Revenue. Under Virginia law, if somebody moves to the state within 30 days, you're supposed to give Virginia tags. We actually had a landlord report their tenant. So they've been living here for 2 years and they're still running out-of-state tags. And so the commissioner called me, asked me what we can do. She said, this isn't the first time we've had this. And under state code, there's actually a couple of different provisions you can adopt. You can have a $100 fee for not having proper Virginia tags, and you can have a $250 penalty for not having proper Virginia tags. And so the commissioner just asked that, she couldn't be here tonight, but she asked that we put these into place. There's a waiver provision at the end, so the commissioner can't waive them if it's through no fault of yours or some extenuating circumstances. But what it does is it does give the Commissioner of Revenue a tool to use to motivate people to get their Virginia plates. And so I'm ready to answer any questions. If the board's good with it, then we'd like to schedule it for a public hearing for adoption.
I have a question. Which vehicles are subject to this? Just those being driven on the roads?
Yeah, it'd be motor vehicles that would be subject to Virginia licensure requirements. So like if you had a farm vehicle that's not subject to licensure requirements.
Okay, what if you got 6 or 5 junk cars in your front lawn?
No, what it would be is if you were by Virginia law required to have a plate, and you didn't have a plate pursuant to
so
Virginia.
if you have it just parked in there,
right, if Virginia law didn't require
you're working on or something like that,
that wouldn't require it. And there's also by law military exemption, because military can tag their car wherever.
Use that for a bit.
Yeah, Florida, because they have no property taxes. That's where all the military folks do their cars. But yes, so there are. This would only apply if by law you were obligated to have Virginia plates and you didn't get them.
Okay.
And it's any motor vehicle, it could be a motor home or.
Any motor vehicle that requires to have tags, motorcycle, anything that's required to have a Virginia license plate on it. The second item, so are we okay to add that to a public hearing agenda?
I would
Okay.
like it. Is that a consensus?
Yes.
All right.
The second is more of an informational update. I prepared a little memo. As you know, next year we've got or this year actually, we're in 2015, the assessment process, the wheels are turning for that. Well, part of that assessment process is we're going to need a Board of Equalization. So what I prepared here is a memo with a tentative timeline for how the assessment process and the appeals through the BOE would work. The critical component, if you look, I put the summer of 2015, which we're now only in January, but this is going to get here before we realize it.
Good.
Is
Work outside it is. Is that a promise?
We're going to need BOE members. The circuit court technically appoints them, but they appoint who we recommend. And so what we wanted to do at this early stage is put the bug in your ears that you need to start thinking about who you want to put forward to the circuit court for membership on the BOE.
How many
Maybe the schools can help you with that.
typically?
I think it's 5 or something.
One, each of us appoint one.
And a couple of alternates if you can also have a couple alternates if you want them. You're not required by law to have them, but it would be 5 plus if you want a couple of
Are
alternates.
they all at large or not, it's not district specific?
I don't think it's,
or-
I don't believe it's district specific. And
I know.
Maybe
Just
we
don't
can
tell them
take-
they need to be on the library.
That's
But
exactly
ideally, it would
right.
be, you would have a mix of
well,
geography.
the law actually requires one of them has to be a real estate professional, I believe, and I think one of them has to be in the contracting business. I'll double check that, but I believe one has to be a real estate professional, one has to be in the contracting trades.
Yeah, let us know about that. 'cause-
Got that covered.
Yeah, be sure.
And then there's, kind of protocol, there's geographic distribution because of the countywide rates.
So I'll send you an update email, but I'm pretty sure that's correct, that at least
Okay.
one's gotta be real estate professional, one's gotta be a contractor. And so, this is again more just to put a bug in your ear, make you aware that this is coming, and more information will be forthcoming.
Yeah, the guy that did it for our district the last 2 times, he said he doesn't wanna do it again.
I wrote mine into doing it again.
You did?
Semi sort of went okay, so.
And their money's budgeted for their work and all that.
Yeah, they do get paid, it's not a lot, but they do get paid.
Do you know how much they get paid?
Not a lot.
Uh,
Think that covers.
no.
Is it like, it's maybe like $50 a case or something?
That's
like that.
sounding like right.
I think
per-
it's
a per
like
meeting,
$50 a
and
case
then
or
it's
something.
travel, mileage
Right.
expenses if they have to travel around.
So, It's slightly more than minimum wage, depending on how much homework they do, which a lot of them don't do a whole lot of homework.
What, they
I
get
didn't-
paid
I
more
didn't
than we
say
do? I'm gonna say.
Well, if they got out there and went to their neighbors and said, please
Yeah.
appeal this.
Please
because I'll get
appeal this,
50
yeah.
bucks."
There you go.
They stir up their own business. Yeah, we can't do that. We gotta find a way to market.
There you go. So- I'll find out the job
Always
requirements.
got
for you.
got the edge there, Mark. All right,
And that's all I have.
okay. Next is the county administrator's report.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I only have one item tonight, and that's concerning the Central Virginia Regional Jail. As you all know, there is an expansion project going on right now that has been cash funded by the 5 jurisdictions that are members of the jail authority. That's Fluvanna, Louisa, Greene, Madison, and Orange. Louisa being the largest member, Orange behind, and then down the other communities. That is all being cash funded, and those monies have been accounted for. What is we are working through is the operation side, starting to load prisoners and what happens when it's opened up. And the county administrators were provided some information about the projected operating expenses. And those operating expenses had always been heretofore part of the pro forma of this facility. It just wasn't real clear where the revenue was coming through. And the first budget that the superintendent put forward had the bulk of those revenues coming from each of the member jurisdictions, to the tune of Orange's would potentially have gone up 77% over the next 2 years, well over $1 million. Significant increase. As you all know, that got my attention, got my counterparts' attention in the other communities, and we're working through a process with the authority for us to be better educated about their proposed budget and see if there are some opportunities to either smooth out the opening of this over several fiscal years, alternative revenue sources, and better understanding their expenses on this, plus looking at what the state is going to fund as far as state-funded comp board positions. I'm in process with that. I should have more information back for you. I think by your first meeting in February, we're working to see if there might be other ways of looking at opening this jail, and I'll keep you posted. But as it came across, it was a significant increase. I think everybody's kind of walked back now, and it's going to be deliberate, at least from the county administrator standpoint, trying to get our governing bodies the correct information.
All right. New business. Award of the contract for insurance consulting. Stephanie?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. In early September, we released a proposal to qualified firms to provide insurance consulting services for the county, the schools, and social services. The services requested include an estimate of annual hours for recurring services, design and implementation of programs, benefit reporting, contract negotiation with our insurance vendors, etc. We advertised on our website, through the state, and through the local media, and received 4 responses. After a very lengthy interview and negotiation process, the selection committee, comprised of county and school staff, feels it's most advantageous to enter into a contract with Digital Benefit Advisors. Digital Benefit provided a concise, clear, and detailed proposal that best fit the scope of work we requested. In addition to their Richmond, Virginia staff, they also have associates throughout the country that can provide additional support on an as-needed basis. And they also agreed to provide an employee benefit statements at an estimated value of $2,000 and essentially lock in their pricing for the next 5 years. Money is budgeted and appropriated in the line item to cover the expenses, which are $4,040 a month or $48,480 a year. Any questions?
Anybody have questions?
So moved.
Yeah, I think
Motion.
our digital benefits rep is here.
Carrie
too.
has been very patient and stayed with us all evening. If you have any questions, this is Carrie Bartlett.
I just wanted to tell you all, it's been a pleasure working with you all for the last 4.5 years. We're very excited to be able to continue that partnership for the next 5 years. The staff that you have on hand handling your benefits is above and beyond top-notch what we see in the industry. I work with a lot of municipalities throughout the state, and I've got to tell you, Orange County is at the top when it comes to who we deal with, the professionalism, and just really dedication to your employees and providing good benefits for them as well. So we're excited to be a partner with you and to continue this going forward. So thank you.
I will make one comment. As I look at the list of services that includes the design and implementation of programs, I mean, as we all know, this entire subject of health insurance is, shall we say, a moving target.
Yes.
And, you know, we've done some creative things in the past that seem to be working, but I think, you know, it's important that our partner in this help us keep an eye on things and make the moves that we need to be as cost effective and yet provide the kind of coverage that we need to. So it's that role is I'm saying in a different set of words, but I think it's important that you help us keep us current and look for opportunities to improve cost, improve service, and the like.
We're dedicated to doing that, and we have our top staff working on really anything that comes our way from the County of Orange and schools. So it is definitely a challenging subject these days with healthcare reform, but we keep everyone as straight as we can with the information that we have available.
All right, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, a request for tax exemption from the Barbersville Baptist Church.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, in your package is a request from Barbersville Baptist Church for tax exemption. County Attorney can certainly answer questions about the authority given to you by the state code and the Constitution to exempt from real or personal property taxes, or both, by an ordinance of the local governing body. What Barbersville Baptist Church has acquired an adjacent piece of property, removed a house, and would like to use it for additional church parking, and would like to enjoy the exemption just as their church property does. So it's a pretty straightforward request. I think somebody from the church is here.
They were here.
Oh, okay.
They're not here now.
Yeah, I had one question, and I talked to Roger about it, and it appears that they have cleared everything off the property. There's nothing there but essentially raw land at this point, which is a good thing. That's hopeful in terms of their planned use. So I told them I would pass that along.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Goodman, second by Mr. Johnson. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Okay, any old business? Any board comment?
County today, and I saw that the reassessment company was reassessing a brand-new building. It would just be nice if we could pass along to the assessment company that buildings that have just gotten their occupancies, they may be better served to go elsewhere to do their handiwork. It happened to be the Murphy Express down there, and I mean, they just opened, so that just seemed a little interesting to me that they could have been better served being elsewhere. On another note, I alluded to it a little bit when Nikki was in here with her report. We have had I guess you would call it the misfortune of responding to adjoining jurisdictions the last couple of weeks for major structure fires. Two of them being fatal fires, one in Louisa and a double fatality in Spotsylvania yesterday. Not only was the dispatching seamless, but we were able to get, from Company 23, they got 6 people out on a tanker at 4:30 in the morning. Within 5 minutes, they were on the road. Yesterday, got out an engine, a tanker, and a ladder truck from Lake of the Woods. Their medic unit was on another call. 2 other Orange County medic units responded to this fire and provided assistance. Once again, they were all on the road within the 5 minutes. It's been a concern for us for quite some time, volunteers getting out and getting out decent numbers of people. So I just wanted to mention that they are doing a superb job right now, and it's not good to have to go assist on fires like that. However, it helps the balance sheet a little bit when we depended so heavily on other jurisdictions, especially Spotsylvania, coming into our jurisdiction to help. So it helps out on the balance sheet a little bit there. I think that's all I have.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I just want to thank Teal for doing a fine job as chairman the last several years. Observed that firsthand the last several months, and observed it from an interested place in the grandstands for a couple of years before that. So, Teal, thank you. You did a fine job.
Thank you.
Yes, indeed.
I'll second that.
I would like to add that I've had Lee as my vice chair for the last 3 years, which has worked out very well, having served as chair before. I appreciate y'all putting me back in a position of leadership.
And you get to
Appreciate your vote.
exercise it next meeting.
Yeah, I know it, but I tell you one thing, I'm gonna hold off on the bad weather. As soon as he gets back, it is your job to call him 3 times a week about opening late.
All right, I have something here. The Orange County school system is required to test their kids for sight and hearing. And the Lake of the Woods Lions has been doing that for the last number of years. Yeah, I only bought, I'm cheap. And
I was gonna call
Next
you
time,
frugal.
next time, let us know. We'll give you a nickel.
anyway, so they've been saving, I think, the school system a lot of money by doing these things with their own vans and equipment. I had a chance to do it with about 30 or 40 of those kids myself. And there's nothing like when a kid walks in there and say, for his sight and hearing test, you ask him if he studied for it, and you get this look in their face. But anyway, the Lions have been doing a number of other things, and I would like to consider drafting a resolution of appreciation for what they've been doing for the county and in the school system, and for their food pantry, and the number of eyeglasses and hearing aids that they've given to the citizens, and on with scholarships and teacher grants and things like that. So I would put it together and bring it back for some future meeting.
All right.
I just have one quick thing. Last Monday, Lee and I had the opportunity to spend the day, all day, at Locust Grove Middle School.
Requirement.
With 8th grade civics and economics classes. And It was an interesting experience, I must say. There were, I don't know, we've had 4 sessions of 50 kids each.
Something like that.
Let's just say, a couple hundred kids, and it was interesting to observe the range of dress, conduct,
Interest.
alertness, and the like. It covered the gamut. I mean, there were some that made you proud, and there were some that made you not so proud. There was one T-shirt that had a special message on it. I don't know if it was intended for us or not. But, I mentioned this largely because it was an interesting thing to do, and it involved local government specifically. That's where they were in their studies. But if you get a chance to do something like that, particularly by the time they're in 8th grade, they can absorb some things that.
They had some interesting questions.
And they had some interesting questions there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd actually hoped to get down to that, but I had.
It was good you didn't, because
But
then it
we-
would have been a meeting and we'd have had to do it completely differently. We talked about that.
Yeah, somebody actually asked, where's Teal? And we said that, I told him why, at the meetings. Anyway, it was good. In fact, it gave me some material for my next article.
By the way, we talked a lot about budgets and taxes and elections, I mean, all sorts of things, so.
And what was interesting is we talked about taxes. They said, oh, your kids, how many of you got cell phones? You're all paying taxes on the cell phones, you know, it's sort of got a little bit of an attention getter. Anyway. All right. Next item, anything more, board comment? Next item, any questions on the informational items? Okay, then next item is the appointments to boards, commissions, and committees. Do we have anybody wanting to make an appointment?
I'd love to.
We have,
Did those guys ever contact you? I'll beat on them again.
we have 2 that are suggested by memorandum here. One is that we give him another job, and then for Mr. Bowman, for the BASAP board.
One editing on the thing, it seems like my time for crime tonight between criminal justice, the jail, and now this. I did serve on this as a commission member when I was in King George County, so I'm familiar with the operation. I would also ask you to appoint Glenda Bradley as my alternate. She now serves as on the finance committee for the juvenile detention facility, so just in case I'm going to another criminal justice meeting, then she can cover me on juvenile detention, so that would be the only edit that I would make on this.
Did somebody make that motion?
I did.
All right,
Second.
okay.
You're welcome.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
And if you can serve on the library board,
That's right.
you live in my district.
You live in 3 different districts if you can serve on the
I
library.
think the code speaks to you not being eligible for that.
Okay, the calendar, anything special on the calendar?
Yeah,
Other
we
than
need to
what-
schedule that hearing.
Yeah, for the,
We don't need a motion on that, do we?
no,
Just a consensus?
We're good.
You usually
What's-
pass.
Just,
pass
yeah,
motion.
just authorize Allison to put it on a calendar that works.
You saying we do or we don't need a motion?
No, you don't need a motion.
no, we put it on for the,
It's been by consensus or by action,
Yeah.
it doesn't, it's
okay,
whatever
we
you
put it on for the,
feel like.
what's,
It'd be February, I would think.
February the.
It would, they would
February.
be eligible to hear the public hearing at the February 10th
February
meeting.
10th.
Okay. All right, let's schedule it for the February 10th. All right,
I just have one question. Since we're on the calendar, now that we've set our calendar for the year, does that mean that our calendars are going to get updated?
okay. All right. I'm looking for another.
So moved.